And now, after further review, a Clemson student's perspective on sports.
It's AFR time, baby. Let's get up. Let's get rolling.
That's right.
Personal foul, 69. Offense. He was given the business. He played it down.
Okay, so if Trevor Lawrence isn't either the second or third string quarterback in the fall, I shave my head and you get a tattoo?
Well, you gotta get a head tattoo. You gotta shave your
get a head tattoo. Now we're talking.
And get a head tattoo.
The personal foul on number 99 of the defense. After he tackled the quarterback, he's giving them business down there. That's a 15-yard penalty.
And now your host, Jay, Bradley, and Evan.
Well, good evening. Welcome to After Further Review. I am not Jay Smith, but as we were talking about before the show, Jay is going to be joining us very shortly, hopefully within the next hour or so. I think we can say that's just a distant by subtraction. Would you agree there, Evan?
My favorite kind of math.
Yeah, so welcome into After Further Review. Like we said, this is a student talk show that we've been doing for a little over a year now. Actually, this is probably going on year 3 now of our total show time that we've had over the last few years.
I was about to say, yeah, if you include the time that it was just you and Jay, and then the time that it was me as a regular guest, and then me as a permanent guest, it's been all of almost a full 3 years.
Weird feeling it's coming to a close, but we've enjoyed every minute of it. Thanks again to WCCP for letting us come in each week and talk about whatever we want to talk about, which usually centers around the world of college football. So that's how we're going to start. College football, like we said, it's in the offseason, but we never really stopped talking about it. Obviously, the draft getting up, kind of rounding up the last couple days or so. That's been a lot of the topic of conversation. Saw a lot of Clemson players get drafted in the first round, which was amazing to see from a Tiger perspective. Highlighted my last 4 days was watching Christian Wilkins do the little shoulder bump with Roger Goodell. Actually got to see Roger Goodell smile for once, which was very, very good to see as well. But we'll kind of get the ball rolling here. A little bit of draft talk. Evan, we obviously just got done with that draft. We had Jackson in here about a week or so ago to kind of run down his picks. He told me he got 50% of the picks right. I don't know whether to believe that or not. I kind of took his word for it. He seemed to do a pretty decent job. He got through the first 9 or 10 picks, nailed most of those. But, being a draft guy, that would be very hard to predict each individual pick, especially because there were, I think, more trades this draft than there ever were before.
Is that right?
I think it was somewhere around 40 picks were switched between different teams, which was the most all time. I guess teams really just didn't know who they wanted.
Yeah. You and I were talking a little bit about this, I think, before the show, that as far as we're concerned, obviously guys who in the grand scheme of things don't know a lot, it just seems like a glorified guessing game, right?
It really does, yeah.
After a certain point, it seems like after the first round, maybe even the second round, I guess, to an extent, but the third through the 7th round, how do you have any idea of how to peg somebody, exactly the spot that they're going to go? Like Hunter Renfrow. How could you have, possibly put him exactly there? Because, there were some people saying that he was a 4th, 5th round talent. Some people saying he was a 7th round talent. Some people who didn't think he'd get drafted at all. So, with that wide range of, talent levels in between the beginning or maybe middle of the 3rd round to the end of the 7th round, how do you gauge any of that? I have no idea.
And that's the tough part, especially after the first couple rounds go by. You may think, we might have blown a couple picks here. We kind of took a gamble here. We got to make up for it later in the draft. You got a lot of your fans screaming down your throat saying, we got to address this position. We got to address this position. It's funny. I was just watching the other day a video of how kind of Mel Kiper became to be the Mel Kiper he is today, and what kind of got the ball rolling with that. All the way back in 1994, you had a very questionable pick. The Indianapolis Colts passed on a quarterback first round, and Kiper just completely ripped him to shreds. That was the first time an ESPN guy had ever really gone after a general manager in the NFL for making a bad prediction here and there, and kind of what got the televised draft started all of a sudden back in 94, and since then it's obviously developed into what we see today, where people, even the day after the draft gets over, start predicting the 2020 top 10 picks, even though we have no idea who's going to leave, who's not going
Tua, and then the rest, right?
Pretty
Tua
much.
And then 2 through 10.
If Trevor could come out early, he'd probably be the first pick, but
yes, those would be the top 2.
Tua will be getting his money for sure. They've actually already come out, speaking of that, with the top 10 of 2020. Tua was number 1 overall. I did think it was interesting. 2nd overall, Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama, the wide receiver.
Really? The top 2 NFL talents, I guess looking into next year, because you would consider Trevor Lawrence a top NFL talent in college football, but next year's top 2 NFL talents are on the same
Jerry
team.
Jeudy and Tua from the same
about that?
team. So, I mean, it makes sense, I guess. If you got the best quarterback, obviously he's got to have a great wide receiver to throw to. So that makes sense a little bit. Number 3 with Justin Herbert. I don't know whether it was a good thing that Herbert decided to stick around for another season. Maybe from a development standpoint, good for him. But when you've got so many quarterbacks that are going to be coming off the board next year, like Tua Tagovailoa and then Justin Herbert, obviously thrown in there. You got guys like Jake Fromm that are going to be coming out as well. I don't know if that was a good thing for him to stay back another year, but for Oregon's, and we're going to talk more later about, the previews we've got coming up for this season. Oregon looking like a front runner this year in the Pac-12. Do you think Herbert can really hurt his draft stock by coming back another year? Like, the injury factor is still a big concern here, but what do you think about that?
I mean, maybe, because there was a lot of talk of this year's quarterback draft class obviously not being as talented as the previous years, but like in recent memory, this just wasn't a great class of quarterbacks.
I mean, as a Duke fan, having Daniel Jones go number 1 overall, the first overall quarterback, that could immediately be pinned as a bad quarterback draft.
Well, and from like a talent perspective, I think maybe he and obviously Dwayne Haskins were, I think, the top 2. And then after that, there's kind of a drop-off in terms of guys like Drew Lock and Jarrett Stidham and, other guys who just weren't as strong of NFL talents, I guess, so to speak. So, if Herbert had come out this year, I think obviously he probably would have been far and away the most highly touted, NFL prospect. So next year coming out the same year as Tua, obviously, I guess Tua's coming out next year because he's a rising senior, is that right?
He will technically, I believe, be a junior. I guess if you factor in, I don't.
But you don't expect
he was
him
a true freshman. Yeah, it'll be his 3rd year.
Okay.
I would expect him to come out, unless something just borderline insane happens to him next year. And
what do you think it would take? Like let's say let's not use Tua. Let's use Trevor, right? Because Trevor's got obviously 1 more, or I guess 2 more required years. What would it take for Trevor not to come out after his junior year and go pro?
Take off the hair like Samson in the Bible, and he just completely loses all his abilities whatsoever. I mean, that's the only real thing you can think about here. Because even if he has a bad year, I mean, look at what Josh Allen had. When he came back to Wyoming, played an extra season, and then just completely wet the bed for an entire year and didn't showcase any of his talent, and was still drafted top 10 in the draft. It didn't even matter, and he had a good rookie year. That's really all I think it's going to take for Trevor Lawrence. Maybe a bad year to drop from maybe 1 to 2, but I think it's already put in pen, not just pencil, but put in pen. He's going to be taken number 1 overall.
Well, and rightfully so. I'm not saying Trevor should stick around for a senior. I mean, obviously as a Clemson fan, I'm saying Trevor should stick around for his senior year. But as a realistic person,
he did say, "I want to win 3 more titles after the championship this year." So
everybody says
he
that,
left that door open.
Well, if he only said, "Hey, I only want to win 2 more titles," that just doesn't have the same.
Yeah,
I don't carry the same weight. He has to say that, but we all know.
Even Zion said, "I might come back and try to win a title next year." We all know that's not going to happen.
I mean, unless you just know nothing about football or how the draft works, you don't expect him to be here his senior. Anybody who knows anything about that would think it'd be absolutely insane.
I think the only chance at that ever happening would be kind of like back to Zion. He said, "There's no chance I want to go play for the New York Knicks. I just don't even want to get involved in that at all." If you get maybe an NFL team that he particularly is just not fond of, or that it's just run extremely poorly, that's going to probably go after him number 1 overall. Yeah, he might think in the back of his mind, maybe I can wait another year and get picked number 1 overall again later for a different organization. But I think it would take a monumental reason for that to even be considered at all from a young man's perspective.
Wait, I just want to back up. You said Daniel Jones was the number 1 quarterback taken off the board. No, he wasn't. Kyler Murray was.
Oh, you're right.
I don't know why that didn't click with me until now, but I was just thinking about the years that people come out and how that could affect draft stock.
I think it was such a foregone conclusion he was going number 1 that not even anybody really thought about when he was picked.
Right.
When I saw, I was doing something that night, so I didn't get to actually watch the draft. When I saw the notification on my phone, I was like, all right, swipe next.
Yeah, moving on.
Doesn't matter. We knew that was going to happen already.
But that's another example of timing being everything, though, because it's just going to work out perfectly for a team that was in desperate need of some kind of rejuvenation and probably could use a more athletic, thinks on his feet quarterback than Josh Rosen, and vibes well with the new coach, Cliff Kingsbury. All of the factors were just there at the right time, whereas if Kyler comes out a year later, he might not even be drafted in the first round, but because the Cardinals had the first pick, the Cardinals were a good fit for him, and they needed him, it worked out really well. So I think that's Daniel Jones, again, would be probably a product of good timing, because if he comes out in a stronger quarterback draft class, you might not see him taken until later or at all, because there were a lot of people, especially college football fans, who just weren't high on his talent level.
Yeah, and this seems to be kind of a new era of the draft where you see a lot of NFL scouts not really looking at college production because we looked at guys like Mitch Hyatt that weren't even drafted, or David Sills, second in the country in touchdowns, didn't even get considered in the draft. He had to sign as an undrafted free agent. I think it's starting to become more of a, what can you do for me 5 years down the road as opposed to what did you do for me last year. It seems to even be more about like hand size and weight and height. Kyler Murray, when he got those extra 2 inches added on, growing his hair out a little bit in the NFL Combine, that seemed to be a huge factor for him. And I guess it paid off because he went number 1 overall. So I think it's interesting the way that NFL scouts pick guys. It's not the way that I think the average college football fan would pick guys in the NFL.
No, not at all, because the average college football fan last year would have seen Baker Mayfield as the Heisman winning quarterback, a guy who has a ton of success on the college level, but just on paper doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would have a ton of success on the pro level. I mean, he's not super tall, and his arm strength is fine, but he's not like Josh Allen could throw the ball a mile or anything like that. And Cleveland scoops him up with the number 1 pick, even though a lot of people, probably Kuiper and those kind of guys, were saying that Baker Mayfield wasn't worth a number 1 overall draft pick. And we see Cleveland have one of the best seasons that they've had in recent memory, and add on some good talent in the offseason, have a pretty decent draft despite not having a first-round draft pick. So maybe the pieces are finally falling into place for them. But again, I think there's an interesting, contrast between, being successful on the college level, being successful on the pro level, and very few guys, I want to say, duplicate their level of success equally in both leagues, I guess you would call it.
And it's interesting because when I was, like I said, I was not paying too close attention to the draft. But when I saw Clelin Ferrell get picked number 4 overall, I guess being a Clemson fan, and this is kind of surprising to me how, maybe being a fan of your own team kind of biases your opinion on one player versus another. It usually seems to happen. But from a Clemson perspective, they won the national championship last year. Everyone saw the talent that we had, especially on the defensive line. When Ferrell went number 4 overall, I think everyone freaked out. They're like, what in the world just happened? There's so many guys that were ahead of them that were way more worthy of going to Oakland. I wasn't really that surprised because I've seen him dominate like that for 3 years now.
I want to say I wasn't surprised, but I guess just because of all of the mock drafts and the, pre-draft chatter that, so-and-so is going 4 to Oakland, that when it was Cleveland, I was a little bit surprised because, as we talked about this not being a very quarterback-heavy draft, there was a ton of defensive talent in this draft.
17, I believe, were picked in the first 2 rounds, which was the most all time.
All the way from defensive line talent, where you've got 3 guys from the same school being drafted in the first round, to to the cornerbacks and safeties, your cover guys, all of the defensive talent in this draft. It equated to quite a bit. There's going to be a lot of good professionals in this class.
That is incredible that you can be the 3rd best at your own position at one school and still be picked in the first round. Because I think
17th overall pick.
17th overall, ahead of 15 other guys that were picked in that draft in the first round. That's incredible. The fact that you can not only be a great player like Dexter Lawrence was, but suffer the late season stuff we saw off the field with the Osterine stuff, not playing in the college football playoff, not being the head-on guy like Clelin Ferrell and Christian Wilkins were gaining all that attention. Lawrence was still good, but he wasn't like the standout talent like we've seen, and the Giants still went out and got him at number 17. That is incredible. That just speaks wonders to what Clemson's done throughout the years.
Yeah, no doubt. But again, going back to Cleveland being 4th overall, because there was so much defensive talent and so many different mock drafts had him going in different orders. But most people, I think, didn't have a Clemson guy going until into the double-digit picks, the teens, and then I think had Christian probably right around where he was, and Dexter wasn't until the early mid-20s. So they all went a little bit, in Cleveland's case, a lot bit earlier than they were supposed to. So I was a little bit surprised. And the very beginning of the draft was the only part that I watched on TV, just because I couldn't find it on my provider at my apartment because we have a weird setup anyway. But the restaurant that I was at, the TV, they had it on, and Cleveland was announced with the 4th pick, and everybody in the restaurant just started applauding, and we were all kind of like, hey, we were kind of confused at first because we didn't expect him to go that early, but of course we were excited for him, and obviously he deserves to with the talent level and the success that he's had. But it was was definitely a pleasant surprise to see him go that early.
Without a doubt. And I think from Cleveland's perspective, I mean, this is huge for recruiting for Clemson in general, because you saw three guys, in fact, come back an extra year, wait around, win that national championship they were going for, and still get picked higher than we probably would have thought they would have been picked last year. I mean, even in a defensive line heavy draft, they were still able to go this high. And we said this during our draft analysis we had with Jackson. You could flip around 9, 10 of these guys. All of them could have gone one of different ways throughout that entire top 15 right there. I think this is probably why I'm not a huge fan of the mock drafts, because really it doesn't matter. We don't know what these guys are thinking. Even the Oakland Raiders don't even know what they were thinking for half the time. They fired like 3 of their scouts. It was interesting when I did look back at that draft, how many Oakland Raider picks were Clemson players.
It was at least 3, right?
You had Cleveland Farrell, number 4 overall to the Oakland Raiders. You also had Trayvon Mullen at 40, defensive back to the Oakland Raiders, and Hunter Renfrow in the 5th round.
And wasn't Cannon Smith signed? Was he drafted or was he signed as an undrafted free agent?
I think he was an undrafted free agent.
I think
you also saw
him too.
Josh Jacobs from Alabama going to the Oakland Raiders. So it seems to be that the Oakland Raiders only probably watched the Senior Bowl and maybe the National Championship, and that was about it. Which, honestly, if from a draft perspective, not a bad idea to pick the 2 best teams' players.
No, and if it works out, then they're laughing all the way to the bank, and the rest of us are kicking ourselves for making so much fun of the Raiders and Mayock and Gruden and saying, oh, they don't know what they're doing or what they're talking about. Well, if these guys pan out and all of these Clemson and Alabama guys become as good a pros as some of us hope, or some of us believe that they will, the Raiders might not be in bad shape all that soon.
And it seems to be, even with like we said, how times are changing and guys from North Dakota State or quarterbacks from Duke are getting picked in the top 10 picks of the draft. It seems to be that the talent across the board still resides in the southeastern region of the United States. SEC again leading most players selected in the NFL draft by conference with 64. They even had, what was it? I think the most ever in the first round. They reset their record from prior years. So just ridiculous. And Alabama, like we said, from a ownership perspective, it's a good idea to pick the guys at the top from the SEC, because your fans really can't blame you at that point. If you draft an Alabama player, people just assume he's going to be great, and if he's not, well, you took a chance, and it was probably worthwhile in the moment.
Unless he's a quarterback or a running back not named Derrick Henry
or Trent Richardson. Yeah.
I don't think Cleveland wants to remember that. They've had a little bit of success recently. We don't want to look back on the 0-16 Browns. We want to look at the 6-10 Browns. The future is bright in Cleveland.
How many wins do you think it's going to take for Cleveland to make the playoffs? Do you think the magic number is 10? Because they had 7 wins last year, 7-8-1.
Well, I think a lot of people think they're a playoff team this year.
Currently, they are not slated as a playoff team according to Vegas. That is
really?
That is the word around the Las Vegas Strip right now. They are not slated to make the playoffs this year.
Well, let's just go through their division real quickly then, because really those are the only 3 teams you got to beat. Like, you win your division and you're in.
Because I thought Greedy Williams was one of the steals of the draft.
They got him
pick. 2nd round after not even having a 1st round pick.
Yep.
He was.
Got him in in the mid-30s or mid-50s?
I think even that pick. Somewhere around the 40s. Him and DeAndre Baker all year we talked about. They were the top 2 linebackers / secondary guys in the entire country. And I think most people kind of agree with that. And you're able to snag him in the 2nd round to join 2 former LSU players in OBJ and Jarvis Landry.
And that defense is shaping up nicely, too. You draft Myles Garrett in the top 5 last year. I mean, Cleveland is in good shape for the future, as much as they've been in bad shape in the recent past. But let's say, Pittsburgh, nobody seems to know what the heck is going on there. Antonio Brown's out. Le'Veon Bell's out. Ben Roethlisberger's old. So I think they beat the Steelers at least once out of the 2 times they got to play them, right?
The Steelers seem to be like they should be on after the NFL on CBS as like a comedy show or a soap drama or something like that. Exactly. Yeah.
The Bengals. It seems like they haven't been relevant since Carson Palmer left for Arizona. So do you think they can contend in the AFC North? I don't.
And they did draft a quarterback, and if you can, I'm looking this.
I'll give you time to Google it while I talk about the Ravens.
Ryan Finley.
Ooh.
Which honestly, I was shocked when I saw that he was still on the board so late, because there were some people saying, Mel Kiper and all those guys included, a couple years ago, he's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft in a few years. And I'm thinking, a guy out of the North Carolina sub-region of the ACC, there's no chance a guy gets picked that high in the draft.
Not since Phillip Rivers and Russell Westbrook.
And then we saw Daniel Jones.
Russell Wilson. I always do that. Yeah, you ever do that?
Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, I say that a lot. But it's Russell Wilson is the football player.
There you go.
Russell Westbrook is the guy who gets triple doubles and doesn't win playoff games.
The guy with the most money currently in the NFL right now, Russell Wilson. So
yeah, he's laughing all the way to
can't miss that
bank.
name. Yeah. But yeah, Ryan Finley drafted, let's see here, 3rd or 4th round. Really late for them. But yeah, from the Bengals,
you still have Andy Dalton, who's like a serviceable quarterback. You got A.J. Green, who's one of the 5 best receivers in the league. But other than
Keyword
that,
serviceable, though.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they finally got a new coach. Finally fired Marvin Lewis after
maybe that's a step in the right direction.
25 years or something like that.
But you figure, let's say the Browns beat them twice, so you're 3-1 in your league. Then you got to play the Ravens twice. And with Lamar Jackson and that rejuvenated offense, maybe they're still a year removed. I think the Browns could mess around and win the North.
It's a very winnable division right now. First time we've really said that in a while, because it seems to be run by the Ravens and Steelers year in and year out. You just living on a prayer that you finally get one year where the Browns or Bengals can sneak in there and get a victory.
Hey, fingers crossed. It's in the cards. The stars have aligned.
Everyone's going to be rooting for them. They will be on primetime 4 times this year, so it's going to be kind of hard to miss the Cleveland Browns.
It's their time to shine.
It's their time to shine. We're going to take a quick break real quick. When we come back, we'll talk more about Clemson's picks from the draft and look at some of the previews for next season. Stick with us.
Mickey Plyler here. Spring brings warmer weather, flowers, and spring cleaning. Clean carpets, upholstery, rugs, and air ducts. Get your home so fresh. Get 3 rooms of carpet clean for only $119 with a free hallway when you mention my name. And if you're waking up stuffy and notice you have to dust more often, it may be time for air duct cleaning. Call Zero Res for a free estimate, 864-558-7300, or book it online at ZeroResGreenville.com. Zero Res, spell it backwards or forwards, it's the right way to clean.
The 2019 blowout rolls on at George Coleman Ford, where trucks cost less and travelers rest. Like an F-150 with Chrome package, suggested retail at $52,230. Sale priced at just $40,999. We're talking great deals at George Coleman Ford, with the 4th generation of Coleman's taking great care of you. The 19 model blowout sale at George Coleman Ford.
With approved credit, must finance through Ford Motor Credit.
It happens every time. When a hailstorm hits, there's an increase of people who want to take your money for roof repairs. Problem is, many of them are just trying to take advantage of you and don't really know what they're doing. Gillstrap Roofing has been around for decades. Trust Gillstrap Roofing to handle the repairs and deal with the insurance. Just because someone knocks on your door with a card that says they're a roofer doesn't mean they'll do quality work at a reasonable price. Call Gillstrap Roofing, 269-1232.
Have you ever dreamed of owning your own business in a great little town? Well, Envision Williamson is pleased to invite you to apply to the Main Street Challenge. This program offers up to $10,000 in financial incentives to start a new business or replicate a successful one in the beautiful town of Williamston. That's right, up to $10,000 to start your dream business. Go to envisionwilliamson.com and search under programs for the Main Street Challenge and apply today. Your dream could become a reality in 2019.
Everyone has someone in their lives that could use a little surprise, a little pick-me-up. You want to deliver those smiles, but who has the time? School, work, and more. Try Urban Nirvana's online gift certificate. Buy and print it right from your own computer. A great way to treat your wife for making all those tailgate preparations, your college student for all the hard work, or mom, just because. Online purchase and print from your computer. Only at urbannirvana.com.
Don't forget, the Blue Heron Restaurant and Sushi Bar is a perfect location for wedding rehearsals, large groups, office parties, graduation parties, family reunions, and birthday celebrations. The Blue Heron can also take care of your catering needs. Locally owned and operated, the Blue Heron is proud to serve Tiger fans the finest steaks and freshest seafood around. 405 College Avenue in Clemson. Call 864-653-3354 for reservations. Visit BlueHeronFood.com for menu and more information.
You've heard talk about Harbin Lumber's strong customer service and elite customer support. They know that time is make or break for you contractors and handymen. Harbin Lumber will walk you through the project from start to finish, providing your order in full and on time. Harbin Lumber will partner with you and find solutions that will not create costly issues and problems later. Call today at 353-5053. That's 353-5053. Harbin Lumber Company. All they need is an opportunity. They will earn the rest.
I'm Richard Thompson of Thompson & King Law Firm, and I believe that every person has a God-given desire to work. That's why I take Social Security and workers' compensation cases very seriously, because most folks don't really want to think they're disabled. They hesitate to file for disability, and when they're turned down, they hesitate to appeal their case. But they are disabled. If you're presently unable to work on a daily basis, even if you don't fully understand the cause, come see me. I'll take your case seriously. I know you do.
But Thompson King Law Firm, 222-0200.
weird saying that after hearing that for so many
I was about to say, your voice is not
years.
the one that I'm used to saying that kind of thing.
I got a little bit more pep in my voice, at least. Like Jameis Jackson level for so long, like, with the next pick in the draft. I know Roger Goodell sounds boring when you hear him on the camera, but at least he smiles and at least he talks like he wants to be there. Because
he was in Nashville this time instead of.
Did you see that crowd?
It's like the highest rated, like, most excited. Like, it's been one of the best NFL drafts as far as like the environment and being there of all time.
We turned it on because, like I said before, I was busy Thursday night, but we turned it on right as soon as the first round, I think, was wrapping up. And I didn't really think that the draft, I didn't even cognizantly realize the draft was happening until that moment. And we turned on the TV and I was like, is this like a replay of like the New Year's Eve festival or something like that up in New York City? Because that's honestly what it looked like.
Did you see, and I think this was some like local news story in the Nashville area, but apparently, and I'm sure this is no surprise, but maybe it is to you because this is the kind of thing that I'm sure is not on your radar. Apparently, Nashville is quite the destination for like bachelorette parties, wedding showers.
Yes.
And apparently nobody decided to tell these soon-to-be brides and their loved ones that the NFL draft and a bunch of NFL fans were going to be taking over Nashville for half a week. And these ladies were furious.
I pulled up the article right here. Nashville, a.k.a. the bachelorette party capital of the world.
Now, I can't say I knew that. I guess I could have figured out that it was like a fun time and like a good place to go for this kind of thing. Would not have guessed that's where most people go for this kind of thing.
You know that sign that says, "Welcome to fabulous Las Vegas"? I guess there's got to be a sign somewhere that says, "Welcome to Nashville, bachelorette party capital of the world."
There's just a picture of like a bridesmaid's dress.
I don't know how you get.
I
don't know how that gets like a sign. Like, I guess you just have like most bachelorette parties per capita. I guess.
You figure, I guess most people are in, like, more people get married in the South than any other region in the country. I mean, maybe
dwindle that down a little more. I guess that makes sense.
Like I said, I'm not a bachelorette. I'm not a bride. I have no idea.
Worst possible place I've ever seen a bachelorette party. We went down to that craft axe throwing place down in Greenville.
Yeah.
Which was a fun time, first off. If you've never been there, very, very fun time to spend.
It looks like a good time.
Getting out some anger on a nice little cardboard or, wooden wall. But we went out there, which I thought was very interesting. They actually they have a beer, like a bar, behind the axe throwing service, which I thought was extremely interesting. Yeah, two things you would not think to combine together. But hey, if you want to go there for a fun time, that's exactly what you're going to combine. But they had a bachelorette party at the axe throwing place, and watching 10 to 12 girls try and throw axes for 2 hours was the most entertaining thing I saw that entire night. Now, it was a little annoying because the first 30 minutes they spent just posing for pictures the entire time.
Well, sure.
And didn't throw an entire axe. It's like the people that show up to gyms, take a picture of like a treadmill, take a picture in the mirror, and then leave.
I mean, you got to let people know.
You got to let people know where you are at all times, exactly. But they actually threw it pretty well. I was very impressed. But seeing them in dresses throwing axes was high on my list of the most entertaining things I've ever seen.
Did they happen to put a picture of like the bride's like exes up on the target, like sling an axe at those sons of guns?
Those things fly, man. I'll tell you what. It takes a couple times to get the hang of it, but once you do, like, it is very, very like thrilling to get rid of that thing and just have it stick right in the wall.
Do you feel like medieval or anything? Like, do you feel like?
It feels like
you're at the Renaissance Festival, but like in real life, like you're in the Renaissance, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. It feels like
when you just make a total mistake in your room and just like, you're throwing like a dartboard or something, or you're throwing like something at your wall and it gets stuck and you got to pay like $1,000 bill for it. This you can do it, and it's actually like
you just tear up everything.
That's the point of it. Yeah, exactly.
Sweet.
Yeah, fun time.
I was gonna say, next time I get mad, I think I know where I'll take a quick little road trip to.
Get the hang of it first, because it took me a little while and it was a little bit scary.
Do you go two-handed or do you go one-handed?
You can go one. They have smaller axes you can throw where you can go one-handed.
I feel like that's not as satisfying.
I throw it too much like a baseball, and it just does not translate. It's like throwing a golf ball, throwing a baseball translates. Throwing an axe versus throwing a baseball, not the same thing
motion
at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
Can't put a curve on an axe.
I think that's why I'm not able to throw a spiral in football. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that's the reason, because I was born throwing the baseball, never really been able to get that like.
You know how to throw a spiral?
I can, but it's very broken. It looks like a duck, throw that Peyton Manning would make. It's very broken. It's not the greatest.
It's like a Jank Bentley kind of throw. Is that what you're saying?
A little bit, yeah. Kind of like a Phillip Rivers little sidearm, like he's throwing like a T-Rex.
There you go. Like just rear back.
Yeah. It's not the greatest, but yeah. Going back to this draft party thing, 500,000 people invaded the city of Nashville to watch this draft party. You think the NFL's not king? They're still very much on top, even just to watch the draft. And yeah, these girls showed up and were interviewed. And needless to say, based on these two pictures, look up this article. They are not happy at all.
I mean, would you be happy if? And I don't know what the male equivalent of a bachelorette weekend. I guess a bachelor weekend.
A bachelor party.
But
yeah.
I don't think we would get as like. I think if we showed up for a bachelor weekend and there's a whole bunch of NFL fans, they would be like, cool, this just got like 10 times better, you know? So I can't think of what the biggest event in my life would be that a whole bunch of NFL fans would ruin. Like maybe my wedding if they were all like, you know, Eagles fans and we're all like real rude maybe, but I can't think of a reason or an event that I would show up to that 500,000 football fans were there and it made it worse for me, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you've just got a bunch of people drinking and having a good time. Like you think that would just add to the experience. But yeah, this chick's name was Stephanie, which based on her picture looks like a very appropriate name for this woman. That's the first thing I would have thought. And they were carrying around a giant cardboard cutout of her fiance's head, which seems
like a fat head?
Like a fat head almost, yeah. So I know I saw some fat heads in the stands for some players. They were, you know, like a college game day where they toss them out.
Well, that makes sense.
You can hold up like Desmond Howard or Lee Corso's head. And then you just got this random Mojo just in the middle, some random guy that clearly was not
someone
picked.
soon to be groomed.
Exactly, yeah. So Bachelorette Ride, if you ever want to go to Nashville, make sure you're not going in the middle of April when the NFL draft is there.
Do you think from the NFL's perspective, because I know in the past few years, and I think in the next few years to come, they're trying to like move the draft around to different locations instead of always having it in New York City, just to try to, I think, you know, revamp interest and kind of just get different vibes going. Like wasn't last year, I think it was in Chicago, something like that.
I believe so, yeah. And I'm going to look up some of the future destinations for that. But
do you think like the turnout and like the reception, the response they got from having Nashville, do you think they'll always like? Do you think they would consider making Nashville a permanent location for the NFL draft?
I don't know if I'd go there. I think a lot of it's like the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously the Super Bowl could be great at one location for, you know, the rest of time. It'd be great. But I think the point of that is to kind of gauge interest around the country. Now, you really don't need that. Like the NFL's always going to have an interest from all parts of the country. But I think it's cool that you get to experience cities like Nashville or Chicago or New York. Because let's be honest, if they were going to pick one central location, it'd probably be New York City. That's where,
like geographically speaking, like I get what you're saying, but like geographically speaking, New York City is far away from more things than it's close to, right? Like Nashville is like dead center. It's just shifted to the right of the country. You know, like I think the very middle, like your best bet, if you were to hold it like geographically in the middle of everything, it'd be like, you know, somewhere in the Midwest, like Oklahoma or whatever. But like
Iowa.
Yeah, like somewhere that nobody really cares about.
Right in a cornfield somewhere.
But like Nashville's kind of in the middle, that like you've got your southern states nearby, the northern states aren't too far away, the Midwest is just next door, and yeah, those people that are in like the Pacific time zone, we still forget about them, but that's always going to be the case. So like you're still appealing to a whole bunch of people. Now I'm not saying that I don't think the NFL does it either, but it would be interesting to consider if they were going to go back to a permanent location for the draft, if they would seriously consider a small market like Nashville.
You could. I think it'd work for a time, but you wouldn't get to experience what we're going to get next year in 2020 when the NFL draft goes to Vegas. Now, you're going to have the Oakland Raiders coming into Vegas. You're
talking about ruining a bachelorette weekend.
Oh, my gosh. Well, if you're going to Vegas for a bachelorette party, I think we got more questions.
That'd be more bachelor party weekend.
That's
so again, it's not ruining it.
For sure. It. Yeah, that's where you need to split up the bride and groom to two different locations. Because you know the groom's going to Vegas. The bride shouldn't.
Let's say you leave your hotel. You know, you're there with all your like best buddies, maybe your brothers, your dad. You're like, all right, we're gonna go out to like the clubs. We're gonna go gambling. We're gonna have a big night in Vegas. And you walk out, and there's the NFL draft, by the way. And that just, again, I think that would make my weekend. Like, I wouldn't spend all weekend at the draft, but I'd definitely spend like a night at the draft and then take in the rest of the city like the other couple of days. But for one night,
like, yeah, you get that first round night and where you get to actually go experience all the players are there, the whole hype is there. By the 4th and 7th round, it's not even really televised anymore. Like, it is televised, but you're not going through and analyzing each individual pick. Yeah. That just takes too long.
Oh, well, unless somebody's paying you to, but
yeah, exactly.
There's not that many people getting paid to do that. So.
We'll kind of switch gears here. This happened a few days ago. I know we've kind of touched on this a little already, but if you haven't heard yet, Clemson and Dabo Swinney agreeing to that 10-year, $93 million contract. Well-deserved. I think most people could agree on that. This was we saw this coming. The only disappointing thing I saw from this new recent deal was the fact that he didn't eclipse Nick Saban's yearly total. I think he was like $0.1 million off, which if I'm like, you know, the athletic board staff, I'm like, just give him that extra little bit just for the sake of like being the #1 overall paid coach, you know, to get one more step above Alabama in a different aspect there. I don't know. That was just me. But great for Dabo. He's going to make $8.25 million in 2019. That'll increase to $10 million in 2027 and 2028. We assume at that point he's still contending and we don't have to worry about that $6 million buyout.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was the most interesting part of that contract was, I mean, obviously he signed for like a long time and a bunch of money, which no surprise there. We want him here for a long time and we don't mind tossing a bunch of money his way. But the fact that his buyout is more expensive if he goes to Alabama than anywhere else, I thought that was an interesting, maybe not unwarranted, but an interesting addition to that contract because, I don't know, it seems like, I think something that sets Clemson apart from so many other programs and atmospheres in the country, and this is coming from, again, just a general student perspective, that there's a certain level of maybe trust or security when you're at Clemson. Like, it just feels different than, being somewhere else. And this is not a knock on South Carolina, but like they're in the middle of a big city in Columbia. And, I just feel like I wouldn't feel as, again, secure or maybe as trusting if I was just generally walking around South Carolina's campus as when I'm on Clemson's campus and I know that everybody is like friendly and part of the Clemson family, like all that kind of stuff. So I thought it was interesting that when it comes to paying the highest paid guy here, that there's a not quite as much trust, that we're like, oh yeah, it is a possibility that you might go to Alabama. Whereas like the common fan, we're kind of like, no, he'll never go to Alabama. But the athletic department and the administration is kind of like,
it's a big deal.
Might.
From a financial perspective, that's a big deal because, the three words that were in bold print on the first screen of that presentation from the athletic board was the Sweeney effect. Because you just know what Dabo has done for this program over the last 10 years and what we project he's going to continue to do for the next 10 years after this. He's just had a remarkable impact on the school itself. I mean, we were just talking a couple weeks ago. We showed up here as students, got that first national championship trip. Look at the change on campus. I mean, you don't have to be a genius or not been here for 40 years to realize there's been a pretty significant change in Clemson's campus since Dabo Sweeney started winning football games here at Clemson. It's been great to see. I thought it was interesting, Saban, what is he, 68, 69 now? Somewhere hovering around that, maybe a little less. Projecting maybe, I know they signed him, I think through 2023, 2024, but once you hit that 2023 age right there where Saban's going to be well into his mid-70s right there, that Alabama enhancement starts to go down a little bit. So for the first few years, while Saban could be considering retiring, that's still at the $2 million for Bama, for Clemson to have to buy out Dabo Sweeney if he goes to Alabama. It starts to slowly dwindle down as we get closer and closer to 2028. But for that 7 to 8 year period, it's going to be a very high total for Clemson to have to pay if Dabo ends up leaving. So we can pretty much put it in pen, I would say that Dabo's going to be here for the long-time future.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's exactly the way we want it, too, which is why not only are we offering him a ton of money for a long time, but also saying, hey, like, it's going to cost you quite a bit if you ditch us for those other guys that everybody says you're going to eventually ditch us for. I do want to kind of backtrack, though, to like our previous conversation about like Nashville, bachelorette parties, NFL draft, that sort of thing. Texture from 864 gets in and says, it's not like your bachelor party got upstaged by the NFL, but your weekend was the same as the National Knitting Convention and 500,000 knitters took over your hotel block. I think that would be kind of the equivalent for us if instead of 500,000 football fans, you had 500,000 people with, yarn and needles trying to, be in your way and take over the city. I think that would put a damper on my weekend.
From a fiancé perspective, if you knew that your future wife and the rest of her gals are going out in the middle of Nashville with 500,000 dudes,
you're gonna give them a heads up,
exactly. Or even from his perspective, he's thinking, well, shoot, you're going around 500,000 drunk guys. You never know what might happen to
or just switch places with them. Like whatever plan you had for your bachelor weekend, just like look into your bachelorette weekend and go, oh, y'all are going to Vegas. Let's like switch.
Yeah, exactly. That's like going shopping in the middle of Greenville for dudes versus, going out in the middle of the NFL draft. That's playing in different playing fields there. We're going to take a quick break here for a couple minutes. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about Dabo's deal and look forward to next season. Stay with us.
This is George Jeffries again with Metal Building Supply in Piedmont. Do you have nuts? Well, we do, and bolts, panels, trims, and all the accessories you would need to do that shed project or roof on your home. Give us a call and talk to Kevin Brown. We can offer the names of contractors in the area and help you with the materials you need to solve those problems on your commercial building or your home. That's Metal Building Supply, 1500 Elrod Road, just off exit 39 and I-85 in Piedmont, or call 295-0506 and ask for Kevin.
The Vault in downtown Greenville has the coolest retro fan apparel, throwback gear from over 200 teams, NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, and over 100 NCAA teams. Local gear from the Greenville Drive and Swamp Rabbits, as well as defunct teams like the Greenville Braves. You'll find something you love at the Vault. Learn more at vaultretrosports.com and find us on Facebook and Instagram. Call 864-370-7850. The Vault, 213 North Main Street in downtown Greenville.
Spring is finally here, and the Mattress Outlet in Seneca is spring cleaning their inventory and offering the lowest prices in the upstate. With more options to choose from in Serta and Beautyrest, and an ever-changing inventory, they are confident they can guide you to a mattress that is right for you. Purchase a foundation or pamper yourself by upgrading to an adjustable base while supplies last. The Mattress Outlet in Seneca, located off Highway 123 in Seneca, across from Chick-fil-A.
When seconds count, a coach must have a team that can perform. The Tigers certainly proved that in the national championship game. You can expect the same from Priority One Security's local monitoring station. Break-ins happen in a matter of seconds. Well-trained, highly skilled operators' rapid response makes all the difference between a break-in and an attempted break-in. Trust in local monitoring from Priority One.
See us on the web at Priority, the number one, security.com. 888-407-SAFE.
The 2019 blowout rolls on at George Coleman Ford, where cars cost less and travelers rest, like a 2019 Escape front-wheel drive. Suggested retail over $30,900. Sale priced at just $24,999 plus tax and tag. And never any document fees at George Coleman Ford, where the fourth generation of Coleman's is taking great care of you. George Coleman Ford, where cars cost less and travelers rest.
Tailgating is awesome, unless you're sitting downwind from the grill. So always remember to pick up a Bojangles Big Bow box. It has everything you need for a great tailgate party.
Feed the whole group with a 12-piece Super Tailgate Special for just $22.99. Bojangles, it's bow time.
You have cracks in your driveway, sidewalk, or settling pool decks? Why tear it out when you can lift it? Canty Foundation Specialists can raise concrete slabs back to its original position using our patented poly-level process. Call Canty today at 864-475-1671. Don't replace it, raise it. 475-1671 or visit us at cantyfoundationsc.com.
Did you know you can spray Line-X on just about anything that needs protection? How about adding a non-slip grip to your axe? Or how about a park bench, a trailer, van liner, work truck, motorcycle? Think outside the bed liner and Line-X it.
Call us today at Line-X of Anderson.
Rely on EnviroMulch for your outdoor project. With all the rain we've had, they can help with rock crush and run along with 57 Stone for your erosion, flooding driveway, and water pooling issues. Order online at EnviroMulchOnline.com.
Welcome back. After further review, Evan McDowell, Bradley Kendall, no Jay Smith this evening. This
We're
fine
all
Monday
crying
evening.
our eyes out right
now. I know it is quite the absence
it's
here.
Depressing.
In the Priority One Security Solutions studios. We are talking a little bit of NFL draft. Not trying to get too much into that because I know the conversation since probably the last.
Probably Friday, honestly.
Well, I was going to say at least the last couple weeks, but definitely since Wednesday, Thursday of last week has been probably all NFL draft. So this will be the last probably that we touch on a little bit. But Bradley and I both saw an interesting tweet from Max Olson. And if I click on his profile, I'll tell you who he is. He is a national college football reporter for The Athletic.
As of like a couple days ago. He just signed on with The Athletic. Yeah, actually.
Good for
I
him.
just scrolled at his first tweet.
So he posted a list. This was on the 27th. So this was, 2 days ago? This would have been, I think, Saturday, probably right after the conclusion of the 7th round. And it's a list of underclassmen who had declared and entered the draft and were not drafted. He says that the NFL draft is over and that 49 out of the 144 underclassmen who did declare were not selected. So 49 out of 144 didn't get drafted. And these were all juniors, right? Not seniors who had nothing to lose, right? By
I guess
declaring.
Technically juniors or like redshirt sophomores, which I guess that would be a third year technically.
Yeah. Anyone who didn't graduate.
Anyone who was not a senior that had graduated, yeah.
And there's some, I mean, from a college football fan's perspective, maybe not an NFL scout's perspective, there's some pretty notable names on this list. I mean, if you just keep it close to home, obviously Trey Lamar was not drafted. I'm looking at Lil Jordan Humphrey from Texas, fun name to say.
Greg Dortch out of Wake Forest.
Greg Dortch, yeah.
All year.
And the LJ Scott, the running back out of Michigan State. Elijah Holyfield, which I know Brad and Ben talked about earlier on the press box.
Panthers recently picked him up.
Yeah, he was. And a lot of these guys, again, were signed as undrafted free agents, but these were guys who were talented college players, and maybe their measurements, or I know specifically for Elijah Holyfield, a lot of his numbers at like the combine and the pro days weren't working in his favor.
Which is surprising because if you just take one look at Elijah Holyfield, that's really all you need to see to know he's going to play in the NFL at some point. This dude is massive. He literally looks like the guys in the world's strongest man competition. Huge dude.
Another name that I just briefly recognized, I guess, because we played Boston College, but Hamp Cheevers, the cornerback out of Boston College.
He was leading the country in interceptions for a little while, right on par with some of the Syracuse cornerbacks that were getting like 5 or 6 picks that season. Really talented player that I think BC easily wishes that he would have come back for another year.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think this kind of speaks towards what we were touching on, I think, a little bit earlier with talking about, Clemson having 3 defensive linemen drafted in the first round and all of those guys kind of as a group deciding to come back for their senior year, kind of finish whatever business wasn't already done. So do you think the culture of college football is changing more so to guys like Christian Wilkins and Clelin Ferrell staying as long as they can and trying to get as much out of it and like bump their prospects up? Or like Justin Herbert recently, who a lot would have said would have been the number 1 quarterback off the board this year. Like guys like that maybe coming back for that extra year just to try to like boost their stock. Do you think the culture of college football is changing at all in that manner?
First off, when I saw this original tweet that you had sent me, I think a couple days ago, you texted it to me. I thought it said 144 out of the 149 were not picked, and I was thinking, holy crap, we got to fix that. That's a problem. If only 5 underclassmen were drafted, that's a pretty big deal. Now, the fact that only 44 were not picked, I don't think it's a huge alarming conversation that, okay, there's something hugely wrong here with people leaving early. This needs to be fixed. The NBA, I think, has it right where they allow guys to go test the draft waters and then come back if they get a feel that, this might not be the best thing for me. I believe in the NFL, for college football, if you decide you're declaring, that's it.
Yeah.
You're on your way to the NFL whether you like it or not.
Or you're not on your way to the NFL.
Or you're on your way to a practice squad, kind of like Ben Bowler was, a couple of years ago. I think it's interesting that, we talked about this before, how a lot of these names, if you would have given these guys grades before the draft, you would have said, oh my gosh, this guy was a standout cornerback in college. Like LJ Scott, great running back out of Michigan State. We've talked about him for, countless number of weeks. He's probably going to get picked. And then they don't get picked. And you're just like, what happens here? Now, it's not like it's the end of the world. We've seen plenty of guys go as undrafted free agents and stick around in the NFL for many different years before. David Sills was one we mentioned before that, wasn't picked as a senior, and Mitch Hyatt as well, that are probably going to get picked up and they'll end up playing somewhere. They just happen to not get drafted and get that signing bonus early on. So I don't think it's a big deal right now. I think, maybe guys need to be a little bit more wary of that when they make that decision whether to leave or not. I think it's a little bit different than the NBA because in college basketball, you're only there for 1 year. You're kind of chasing the money already. In college football, you get 3 years to kind of make a name for yourself. And like Christian Wilkins, by that 3rd year, if you feel like you still have unfinished business left, might not be a bad idea to come back for one more season. Because at that point, you're kind of already 3 years into your career. What would be one more year in college?
But for somebody like a Christian Wilkins or like this year with a Justin Herbert who was, known on a national stage and was widely regarded as having the talent to make it at the next level and, probably should go to the next level. I think a lot of people were expecting Justin Herbert to declare for this year's NFL draft. That's a lot of pressure on one kid to turn down, if you are projected to be a first-round draft pick like Christian would have been last year or like Herbert was this year. That's a lot of money and a lot of opportunity that you're turning down. And if you're somebody like Deshaun Watson a couple of years ago, who, of course, declared after his junior year, but coming from a humble background and, desperately wanting and maybe even in some cases for some people needing to, be the financial provider for your family, you can't blame them for needing to make that decision. If they think that's what's best for them and their situation and the people around them, then I absolutely can't fault them for making a decision like that. But then you do see a success story like Christian Wilkins, who, even though he was widely regarded as being NFL ready this time last year, decided to come back for another year. there's a lot of risk involved with that. He could have lost out on a lot of not only money, but a lot of potential teams that wanted him. I think if he was left on the board after the 14th pick, if the Dolphins hadn't taken him, there would have been a lot of teams licking their chops at the chance to draft a guy like Christian Wilkins, who makes a difference not only on the field but in your locker room.
No doubt about it. I think given the sport that we're talking about here, college football, and the risk for injury is just so severe coming back for another season. You saw guys like, what was it, the Notre Dame linebacker, Jalen Smith from a couple years ago, played in that, I guess it was the Fiesta Bowl, got hurt and fell like 3 different rounds. There's so many different rounds and so many different players going around and getting picked. And real quick, before I forget, I'm looking at this list right here. Scroll down about halfway down that first list. Datryon Evans, the tight end from Friends College. Have you ever heard of Friends College?
Friends College?
Friends College?
I closed the list out. Now I got to pull it up.
I know Friends is a TV show. I've never heard of the university.
Oh, Friends like you and I are friends. Like that. Wait, halfway down the first column. Where?
Datryon Evans, the tight end, right. He starts with letter D. Friends College. I've never heard of that.
I can't say that I have either. Was this? I've never heard of this guy either.
I've never heard of him.
Some kind of tight end prospect that was supposed to be drafted, or we just
it's one of those positions like if you're really good and you're kind of like those under the radar like tight end or like a kicker or like a safety or something like that, you can get picked from some of those small schools. Never heard of that before. That's interesting.
Well, see, now I got to look up Friends University.
Yeah, please do.
That sounds like a fun school to go to. A wholesome place.
You have to. It has to be a fun time if you're going to Friends College.
It is a private, non-profit 4-year institution. I will give you 10 guesses as to where in the United States. No, yeah, you could guess the state. Well, I'm not going to give you 10 guesses for the state because there's only 50 of them.
I got a 20% chance to get that right.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you guess the city, and it's like a big enough city that you would like.
Apparently they have a football team.
Apparently they do.
Apparently so.
Originally founded in 1898.
Sounds about right. Okay. Let's go New York.
Not that state.
We'll go up northeast.
Not the northeast. That's not a bad guess. Probably where I'd have started.
Okay, I'm gonna stay with the big school, big states. I'll go California out west.
Another good guess.
Another good guess. Not Texas.
No,
not Florida.
No,
I'm hitting all the regions here. We'll go Midwest.
You're starting off in good places.
Okay.
I'm not saying any of those are close, but those would have been like probably my first couple of guesses too, except for some off the wall.
Is it up in Michigan?
It is not in Michigan.
Oh, okay, give me a little help here. What region are we talking here?
I would say, this state is not known for football.
What would their region be for the Little League World Series? Let's go with that.
Midwest, for sure.
Okay, that helps a little bit. Midwest. Nebraska.
No, but like that area, like that, like
Kansas.
There you go. You got the state.
All right, Kansas.
There's not that many cities in Kansas. I
can't name many cities either,
other than maybe Kansas City, which
Topeka.
That's a good guess.
That's the only other one I got.
The other one,
Kansas
Wichita.
City. Wichita.
It's in Wichita. Yeah.
Friends College. Okay, so if I guess I thought Wichita State was the only school in Wichita even remotely worth mentioning.
Apparently not.
I guess we got a few more mixed in there.
They have an acceptance rate of 58%, which is kind of right on par with Clemson almost.
Yeah.
Their graduation rate is 70, which I guess sounds good. Like that's a majority.
We're getting some free publicity here. If anyone's looking for schools, like take a trip to Topeka.
Wichita. They got a real nice little campus here. Big old building. I'm looking at pictures of now some of their football players. Cool helmets, but no, they're football. I mean, this
not exactly known for their football team.
These look like a high school athletic program. So it's no wonder this guy wasn't drafted. Nobody knows this school or who this guy is.
It's just it would be really hard to get intimidated by a school that you're playing like Friends. It's like saying you're going into Serene Hall. Like it's just a fun, loving place with a very peaceful name. Like you wouldn't expect much to really go on out there. I kind of picture Friends College being in like the 12th hole at Augusta. That's honestly what I think about.
Well, their mascot doesn't help a whole lot. I mean, it's a fine.
I would be real impressed if you could get the mascot.
I was going to be real impressed with myself, too. I had to Google it.
They're not the Friends, are they?
No. How lame would that be? The Friends? We're playing the Friends today? No. It's a little bit better than that. They're the Falcons. So at least a decent mascot.
Falcons.
Yeah, but you tag the word Friends on the front of it, and it kind of loses its tenacity.
Well, Datryon Evans, pack your bags. You're leaving Kansas. Go find another home somewhere.
Not Kansas anymore.
Not Kansas anymore. He gets to leave the state finally. No NFL football teams there.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you think Friends could beat Kansas in a one-on-one game? Given the opportunity? Possibly.
Well, give Les Miles a couple of years and definitely not. But right now, Who knows?
That could change.
Who knows who could be Kansas, right? A lot of people could be Kansas.
So
right
going back to this original conversation, I don't think this is really going to be a big deal. I mean, this has probably happened every single season. I just think it's interesting that a lot of these guys we would have kind of just assumed would be picked at some point. And from an NFL perspective, like if I'm a GM and I see a guy like, an LJ Scott or like a Greg Dortch that was one of the top wide receivers of the country, or even Joe Giles Harris out of Duke was a great linebacker in the ACC all year. Go on ahead and pick the guy. I mean, I know maybe he wasn't highly rated for you, but a great college standout for me, at least is a sign enough where he might have a potential in the NFL.
See, I think that goes back to the disconnect that I think we mentioned in maybe the first segment between college and the NFL. And this is why I've always liked college football more than the NFL. I always will like college football more than the NFL because you get a wider array and a wider variety of teams and talents and people and coaches and personalities and players that you just don't get in the NFL.
And I think that's why a lot of players are deciding, like Christian Wilkins, to come back. And that would be a driving factor for a lot of guys to return because college is just, especially in football perspective, that is just such a unique environment to play in.
It's just different.
You're not going to get in the NFL because the NFL is a business, let's be honest.
And there's only 32 teams. You get, 65 men on each team. So
you've watched Hard Knocks. You see how it goes down.
Yeah, but with college, you've got, however many, not just the Power 5, but you've got like FCS, and you've got just guys all over the country and talent that you're not going to see at the next level because like guys like Greg Dortch who have a ton of talent and make a pretty good wide receiver that might not make it into the NFL. We got to watch him
the
for 3
average
years.
NFL lifespan is like 3 years. It's not long at all.
No.
And the NBA is different because if you get picked in that first round, you're gonna play. Like it's gonna happen. You're gonna make the team. You're gonna start probably within a couple of years. It's gonna happen. NFL is different because you could come in. You might have left early and not seen your team win a national championship game, and you're sitting there, on the sidelines practice squad playing, only a couple times a week. It's just a different animal.
It is. And I know that there are fans of the NFL, especially like the Packers. I know they like to say they have a college football environment, and you just don't. It's just not the same at all. And it never will be. And that's why, like I said, the exposure that these guys get with the talent that they have in college is just unparalleled. But I think that's a good place to leave hour one, probably. We'll take a quick break.
We'll be back in a sec.
We'll be back in a few.
And now, back to Jay Brown.
After further review, thank you for joining with us again every Monday now. We really appreciate everyone tuning in to listen to two random college kids rant about college football.
Usually 3 random college kids, but today we spare you the third one.
One of them is not dedicated enough apparently to show up for 2 hours a week.
Says a guy who's ditched us how many times this semester?
Only
2, 3?
Only twice. I was sick. I was on my deathbed one time, all right?
All right, that one I can't get mad
dude.
for.
Intramurals are a pretty important thing here at Clemson, so I really could not stick around for that.
If my teams were good enough to have made the playoffs and had played on Monday nights,
it didn't make it any better. And that's what I was hoping for. At least we could have won the game and made it worthwhile missing 4. I kind of wish I would have been at the show, though, because I had lost and wasn't here to talk college football with y'all.
That's 0 for 2. That's a bad Monday right there.
Yeah, I mean, you take our Go for 2 show, it was 0 for 2. So, yeah. We talked about last segment. We kind of, got into a little bit of the difference between NFL and college. That was a little spark of a debate here with a lot of the underclassmen that had not been picked in the NFL draft. You got to think a lot of those guys definitely were probably told by NFL scouts that it was worthwhile for them to come out for the draft, maybe 4th or 5th round picks. I don't know how much really credibility goes into some of those draft grades they give those guys because it almost seems like a lot of them just want more guys to come into the draft process itself as opposed to telling them you're not going to get drafted, just go back to college.
I mean, I guess, but maybe being an NFL draft scout or talent analyst doesn't require the most honesty. But I feel like if it was me and I was meeting with a guy, like a Mitch Hyatt that 4-year starter, all conference, like one of the best offensive linemen in the ACC for sure. If I'm meeting with him and he, on paper, looks like a guy who should be drafted, probably believes he's a guy who should be drafted. If he's not very high up my draft board and my team doesn't have a good chance of actually taking him, I think I'd tell him that.
You would think so.
I would hope.
Then there's also guys that are, apparently there's been coaches or GMs out there that have said in the past, we're going to take this guy, and then it's basically just kind of using it as a smokescreen, saying we're not actually going to take him. We're just trying to fool other teams. You got to think a lot of that sometimes happens behind the scenes, probably more often than you would think, because there's 32 other teams out there vying for only a select few guys. Maybe it's best from a team's perspective to go out there and lie a couple times and just see if maybe you can throw a couple other teams off. I think a lot of this is just personal decisions, meeting with your family, trying to find the best financial decision to make. I wish some of these guys could just go back to college if not being picked. Unfortunately, that's just not the way that the NFL world works.
Should it be, though?
Probably not.
Really?
I don't know. That's an interesting debate to have real quick. Should guys that don't get drafted be allowed to come back to college?
Hey, if you want to get in on this, I think we have the phone numbers memorized by now. We got.
I certainly don't.
You don't? Well, I know the text line 656-1566. Right. That
sounds about right.
That sounds right to me. You can Google fact check me if I'm wrong.
Know what the call number is.
654-ROAR is the phone number. 654-7627. That one I know for a fact. The text line I might be off by a digit or two. But either way, if you want to get in on any of our debates, but I guess this one specifically, feel free to hit us up.
From a player, yeah, I would definitely like to be able to come back to college. I think it is different, though, because I guess once you make that decision, you kind of already said goodbye. You've kind of already moved on from that chapter of your life. You've kind of started to, envision what your life is going to look like in the NFL. You may have even hired an agent at that point. I get why the rule is in place. I understand the purpose of it. But I think the NBA, like I said before, I think the NBA has it right, where you can come back after testing it out, going to the combine, realizing this is not for me, and then being able to come back to college and play that extra season. I think that is the way it should be. Unfortunately, that's just not the way it is right now.
Yeah. Obviously, football and basketball are very different in many ways. But, yeah, it probably wouldn't lend itself to football as much as it does basketball to say, like, hey, if you don't get drafted, like, you can come back because in football, it's just, by then you've already moved on. You have your depth charts. Everything is so set that it might throw off the chemistry of the entire, 65, 70-man roster. Whereas in basketball, you've got, 15 guys on the team.
That is true, because it is after the spring game. So you've kind of already filled in those roles, what you're going to see. And I think teams can make it work, where if a guy like Mitch Hyatt came back, we could easily just slide him in as an offensive lineman here in Clemson. Like, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to the university, but it is a little bit awkward at that point,
Yeah, for sure. We got a couple texts in. Texter A64 says you can in baseball, you can get drafted and not really declare. Yeah, that's different, though, in baseball, because you can get drafted straight out of high school.
Oh, yeah.
And unless
40 rounds as well.
Right, and unless the NBA, does their rule again where, you can come straight out of high school. No other sport really drafts straight out of high school, so that's a little bit different.
Maybe hockey, but that's about it.
I don't
even know.
You think I know how the NHL draft works?
Shoot, I was hoping you would know what the Friends mascot was, but I whiffed
Falcons
on as well.
now. Never forget that. Another texter from the A64 also gets in, says, what do you think Kelly B's draft stock will be? About this time next year, Kelly Bryant, I would assume would declare, right? Because that'll be his fourth year of eligibility.
He might as well. Why
he's not going to hurt, right?
No, it can't hurt him at all. It's going to be interesting because I think Kelly Bryant's going to get a lot of the same treatment that Trace McSorley is going to get from Penn State, because great college quarterback. We assume that he is able to handle playing for a school like Missouri, can be a great serviceable quarterback for them. Was highly regarded coming out of Clemson, like Trace McSorley was highly regarded coming out of Penn State. And it kind of like a lot what Lamar Jackson was kind of told out of his draft process. You might want to think about maybe playing a different position. I think that's what a lot of people are going to say to Kelly Bryant when he leaves Missouri. Try a different position.
I see a couple different scenarios working out for Kelly Bryant. I think best case scenario, he ends up kind of like Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott at Mississippi State was a talented quarterback who at the time got Mississippi State up to number one in the rankings. Now, I obviously don't think Missouri at any point is going to be number one next year. But
they're
I think
also not even going bowling, so.
Well, and that probably hurts Kelly to an extent as well. But I think Kelly's got a fresh opportunity to really showcase his talents and his skill set and maybe prove a lot of doubters wrong, because there are certainly folks out there that say, and to Clemson specifically, like, yeah, you won the national championship, but you wouldn't survive an SEC schedule. Okay, well, now here's a guy who started at quarterback for an ACC team and, won however, made it to the playoff, have 14 or 12 games, something like that, as the starter.
12-2.
12-2. Yeah. So now he's got a chance to play an entire SEC schedule and maybe even further prove his worth. So I think if he can develop his arm talent a little bit more and rely on his feet as a backup option as opposed to being his first option, you could see him become a little bit more balanced and lead a team that maybe has all the pieces in place like Dallas did when they drafted Dak Prescott. I mean, they had Zeke Elliott as a running back. They had a really great offensive line, a couple defensive guys who were really good. So, like, he was drafted into a good situation. I think if Kelly was drafted into a good situation, you might see him become a fairly serviceable quarterback like that. But that being said, I don't think anyone's ever really, oohed and awed over Kelly's arm strength, and especially with Trevor Lawrence breathing down your neck.
Yeah.
So I just don't see Kelly being an everyday starter in the NFL for sure. Maybe a backup quarterback. I don't know. Third string. I don't know. I mean,
Charlie Whitehurst made a pretty good living being a backup. You see how
he's grown out some sweet hair while doing so.
Grown out a great head of hair right there for sure. I think Kelly is going to get a lot of comparisons to Jalen Hurts. I think because we've seen Jalen, he's played on a high level before, been to a national championship game. You've seen what he can do in the past, but it really, a lot of the mantra about Jalen Hurts is that he relies too much on his legs and he doesn't have a good arm. And now he's put in a situation in Oklahoma where he's going to be depending on that arm pretty much 90% of the time to lead that offense. And, Kelly's going to have a chance as well, like Jalen, to kind of change the way that people view him. Between Alabama and Clemson, I think a lot of people have been saying you're only good because of the talent that's around you. That's really the only reason that people look at you as a serviceable quarterback is because people around you are just that good. I think a lot of that's the reason why Daniel Jones was drafted so high is because he was surrounded by a lot of guys that really weren't that great, and he still was a pretty decent quarterback.
Yeah, got another texture. This one from the 706 says Missouri can finish third or fourth in the SEC East. I guess that's fair. I mean, the SEC East obviously is going to go through Georgia, and then you've still got Florida and, maybe Kentucky if they bounce back from losing guys like Josh Allen and Benny Snell. So, I think a third-place finish for Missouri with a third-place finish in the SEC East, I should say, for Missouri with a new quarterback and with that postseason ban, I think that's a fairly respectable season. And I think worst case scenario for Kelly is that he goes undrafted, but I think he goes somewhere in between that and Dak Prescott's situation. I think he ends up a lot like, do you remember Seneca Wallace? Does that name ring a bell?
Absolutely not.
You don't know Seneca? Because he was backup quarterback. He played for
kind of a little bit
the Seahawks. I would say maybe the Redskins for a while. I mean, he was a backup quarterback. I think he also wore number 2. So I think I could see Kelly as a few years as
sounds like one of your my players you take out of Iowa and lead him out of high school.
Well, hey, he's living the my player dream. He made the league. What else? Can
and did you see? Actually, side note, real quick. Did you see in the new Madden 2020 you can now play in the college football playoff between I think it's 6 or 7 different schools.
Really?
You can play as a quarterback for Clemson, play in the college football playoff, and then get drafted. So there is still a little bit of that college football video game vibe working its way to Madden now.
I've always wondered, and I guess that's kind of on the opposite side of, I've always wondered, you create your player on the NCAA video game, and you go through the entire high school season, and you try to get recruited, and then, of course, if you're playing on easy mode like I do, you get recruited by almost everybody.
That's weak.
Yeah, but it's fun. You ever thrown 75 passes a game for 400 yards and 7 touchdowns? Makes you feel so cool, especially for somebody who's never good at football. So then you get recruited to whatever school, and then you play part of a season or the whole first season. I've never made it past that, so I don't know what happens after you play your second, third, maybe in fourth season. Does the college football game, do you actually get drafted somewhere? Where does that career end?
So
I have no idea.
What's your player's future going to look like when he's the number 1 projected overall pick of his junior season? Are you going to leave or are you going to stick around?
I mean, if there's millions of dollars on the table, I'm a first-round draft pick, I got a hard time turning that down.
And what do you say as a coach? I'm really curious what these conversations look like. Because I know John Calipari is, prided himself on being the most honest coach in college basketball, or he's going to tell a guy, hey, if you need to leave now, now is the time to go. Do you think a lot of coaches want to see guys return? Do you think a lot of them are trying to sell on their school as being that, great place to come back for your senior year? Or do you think a lot of coaches are kind of brutally honest?
It's got to be a little of both, right? And it obviously depends on the coach. I think
That's a cop-out answer.
Well, no.
It's true, though.
I mean, it is, because you got a guy like Dabo Swinney who is obviously in it for more than just the sport itself, and he loves his guys, and he wants them to do well. So obviously, he's going to try his best to get them set up in as successful a position as possible, but also he cares about them as people and would love to have them around for longer. I guarantee you, last year when Cleveland and Dexter and Austin and Christian were all we're coming back for another year. If I'm Dabo, I'm probably crying tears of joy. Not only because of...
You saw him at the draft this year. He was jumping up and down like a little kid.
Because he's just as happy for them. Yeah. But he was
also
just as happy last year when they said they were coming back, because not only does he get that talent level in the field, he gets those kind of men in the locker room and ingrained in that program, and that's what we've talked about time and time again, has set the foundation for Clemson as we now know it, is going beyond what happens on the field and forming these guys into successful young men and then athletes second.
Recruiting-wise, it's big either way, because you could either get a guy come back like Christian Wilkins, win a national championship game, show guys at the end of the championship run, hey, this is why you should come to Clemson, but you also get guys, if they do leave early and get picked in the first round, hey, if you come to Clemson, you could play for 3 years and go in the NFL draft first round. It's possible.
And then you've got coaches like Nick Saban, who obviously love his players, but in a much different way in that
harsh love.
Yeah, I don't think Nick Saban could care less whether or not Tua leaves next year if he comes back for his senior year, because if he goes to the league and is successful, then if I'm Nick Saban, I've done my job, right? It doesn't matter when he got there, how he got there, as long as he's there and is doing well. Like, you can't ask much more of me.
Saban's different because you've also got guys that are going to be recruited next year that could just replace them and fill those gaps in easily right away.
Oh yeah, that's exactly the attitude around Alabama. Not just the players, but like the coaching staff. We've talked about the lack of continuity among Saban staff. It's just a next man up mentality with everything that they do. Texter gets in again that says Missouri can finish 3rd or 4th. Says if Missouri finishes 2nd in the East, Kelly will get drafted high. I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that.
I don't think so either, because like we've been saying, college football, I think to the NFL's minds, is a lot different than the way that the average fan would view college football. Most people would look at college football and say, if you're the best player here, you should be the number 1 pick, in the draft or in the first round in the NFL. It doesn't quite work like that. It all comes down to what do these teams need and what do they see these guys in 5 to 6 years, not where they are right now. From Kelly's point, I think if he finishes 2nd, if they're able to beat out Florida, that means Kelly Bryant had a phenomenal year. That means he played off the charts, way better than anyone would have predicted. So yeah, he maybe has a better chance of getting drafted. I don't know if he will, but he has a better chance.
Yeah, and it's all contextually speaking as well, because under the Paul Johnson regime, at Georgia Tech, there was a time when Georgia Tech was one of the best football programs in the ACC, winning the ACC championship, but you didn't see teams fighting over who was going to take Georgia Tech's quarterback in the first round because it was an option-style offense, and that quarterback, never would have played in the NFL anyway. So if Kelly Bryant absolutely balls out next year and leads Missouri to being one of the best, football teams in maybe even the entire SEC, but definitely the SEC East,
Which we don't expect.
Which we don't expect, right? Because we know the situation that he's stepping into, and we kind of know him as a player. And of course, we wish him the best. Obviously, I would love to see Kelly Bryant be successful and be drafted really highly. But the fact that Missouri is not in any kind of position to reign supreme over the SEC anytime soon, coupled with the fact that next year's quarterback class is going to be pretty darn good, it just kind of stacks the deck against Kelly, unfortunately.
I don't think it's really going to happen. I mean, he's going to have to get real lucky. He's going to have to find a team that really needs a guy like him, and I think it'll be interesting how the coaching staff uses him, because we saw the same situation, obviously a little different, but with Lamar Jackson. When he was coming back for that junior season, they tried to showcase his arm more, kind of build more of a highlight reel of NFL talent for him as a quarterback.
I mean, it worked.
It did work for a time. I mean, it obviously got him where he needs to be right now, and he's starting for the Baltimore Ravens, so I think Kelly would easily take that right there. But I think Missouri's going to use Kelly the way that he wants to play. I think they're going to leave it kind of up to him since he's now the guy. If Kelly wants to be running quarterback, by all means, if that's the best thing for the team, they're going to do that. If he can showcase his arm and he's developed into more of a passing quarterback, then we'll see.
I was about to say, in a situation like Missouri and Kelly Bryant are in right now, you've got nothing to lose, so why not just go for it?
Yeah, you've got no bowl game coming up.
No, you've got everything yet nothing to play for.
You're not the Missouri of old where they were
Chase Daniel, baby.
Considered one of the top 5 programs to go to. That's back when Kansas was good. I mean, that was
Jeremy
a long
Macklin,
time ago.
Good guys.
Yeah.
A couple other texts before we cut to a quick commercial. Another texter gets in on Kelly, says he will not get drafted in the first 5 rounds. I don't think he'll get drafted at all. Honestly, I wish him well, but realistically, I don't think so. I think I agree more with that than the possibility that he does well and gets drafted high. I think it's more likely that he doesn't get drafted at all. And then I saw another text, and I might have just lost it. Backup quarterback, best gig in the game. And
it's great.
100% agree with that.
It's the equivalent of a bullpen catcher, but it comes with more money. I mean, it's phenomenal.
And another text just came in. Missouri is pass-oriented. That will dispel the myths that Kelly cannot pass. Or it'll expose the truths that Kelly cannot pass, and all of a sudden you're looking at Kelly Bryant to backup quarterback again. I don't think that'll happen either. I think because he knew what he was getting into and why he was getting into it, and Missouri, again, is going to probably cater more to him than they would, hey, let's compete for a playoff spot.
Well, that even goes more into the Jalen Hurts comparison because Oklahoma's a pass rate offense right there, and if he's not able to successfully pass, you got a guy in Spencer Rattler who's one of the top dual threat quarterbacks in the country coming in that might take his spot. You just never know.
Who do you think has a better season? Just not a team, but just individually, like at the end of the year, who's stats will be better and who will look better on tape, Jalen Hurts or Kelly Bryant?
I want to say Kelly. I think it's going to be Jalen. He's just surrounded by so much more talent. It's going to be hard for him not to succeed.
That's true.
I think Kelly has a much bigger chance that he fails than Jalen does. I think they might have very similar seasons. One team's obviously going to do way better than the other one will, but I think Jalen in the end probably has, I don't think he's going to win the Heisman. By any stretch of the imagination, I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to win the Heisman this year.
No.
But I think he's still going to have a pretty decent season. It'll be interesting to see how his offensive production translates to Oklahoma's system.
I do want to get to this text right after the break because I think you'll appreciate who it's coming from. But I think, yes, I agree with you. Jalen Hurts has a more successful season than Kelly Bryant does. However, if they swapped positions and Kelly went to Oklahoma and Jalen went to Missouri, I think Kelly is going to be more successful at Missouri than Jalen would.
I would agree with that. Actually, yeah, I like that point. I think Kelly as a quarterback is better than Jalen Hurts.
I was going to say, all other things like playing fields equal, I think Kelly Bryant's probably the better quarterback.
Well, we saw playing fields similar. We saw him at Alabama and Clemson back in the day.
Yeah,
so
but that wasn't even because of the defenses and other factors, we'll call them. But
all right, we're going to take a quick break real quick. When we get back, we'll talk more about this and get into some little rumors about maybe USC going after Urban Meyer. Stick with us.
Are you craving a juicy steak cooked just the way you want it? The Blue Heron in Clemson offers only the best selection of meats, sushi, sides, house-made pizza, drinks, and desserts. Join them for happy hour 7 days a week at the downstairs bar, open until midnight. Catch the game on big screen TVs with your friends. 405 College Avenue in Clemson. Call 864-653-3354 for reservations. Visit BlueHeronFood.com for full menu and more information. That's BlueHeronFood.com.
The 2019 blowout rolls on at George Coleman Ford, where SUVs cost less than travelers rest. Like a 2019 Explorer, suggested retail $40,905. Sale priced at just $34,999 plus tax and tag, and never any document fees at George Coleman Ford, where the fourth generation of Coleman's is taking great care of you. The 19 model blowout sale at George Coleman Ford, where SUVs cost less than travelers rest.
I'm a donut nut, I'm a donut nut, I'm a nut for Krispy Kreme.
Hi, I'm Glenn Reese with Krispy Kreme Donut Company in Anderson and Spartanburg. We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Drop by for a delicious donut and a cup of coffee. And remember, raise money for your club, church, or group of worthy cause. Sell Krispy Kreme donuts. Call Anderson and Spartanburg Krispy Kreme.
I'm a donut nut, I'm a donut nut, I'm a nut for Krispy Kreme.
Hi, I'm Dabo Sweeney. One of the things that makes me proudest about being the head coach at Clemson is participating in the most exciting 25 seconds of college football, running down the hill after rubbing Howard's Rock. The roar from the crowd is deafening. Even though Howard's Rock is one of Clemson's most prized possessions, most of the time it sits all alone. That's why we depend on Priority One Security's video surveillance to keep Howard's Rock safe and secure.
See us on the web at PriorityOneSecurity.com. That's priority, the number one, security.com.
Has your extra bedroom turned into a junk room? Is your garage packed and cluttered? Specializing in junk removal and cleanouts, Absolute Waste Management is there to help. They handle the tough stuff like lifting, loading, and dumping. All you have to do is make the call. They do the rest. Call or text 864-266-7131 for a free estimate today. Make the call, schedule an appointment, and say bye to the junk. It's that easy. 864-266-7131.
David Green and the professionals at Green Law Firm understand your rights when it comes to any issue with the IRS. The IRS has instituted the Fresh Start program, and David Green knows how to use the Fresh Start program to your best advantage. The Green Law Firm can't change your past, but they can certainly change your future. For a free strategy session, call the Green Law Firm at 271-7940 or go online at greenlaw.legal. That's greenlaw.legal.
You have cracks in your driveway, sidewalk, or settling pool decks? Why tear it out when you can lift it? Canty Foundation Specialists can raise concrete slabs back to its original position using our patented polylevel process. Call Canty today at 864-475-1671. Don't replace it, raise it. 475-1671 or visit us at cantyfoundationsc.com.
Hi, this is Coach Dabo Sweeney. You know, when it comes to buying or servicing a vehicle, I always choose Toyota of Easley for their great selection, affordable prices, and outstanding customer service. Toyota of Easley is a family-owned business, and in all the years I've been a customer, I've always been treated like family. I encourage you to visit Toyota of Easley if you're looking for a new or pre-owned vehicle or in need of service. Toyota of Easley is all in, and their name means a great deal.
I know it's very sentimental. Jay Smith just walked in the door. Finally,
special guest.
How are we doing,
decided
everybody?
to hop in here.
I had to let you two take the reins at least once. You did a good job. I listened to it on the way over.
Sure you did.
Had a dinner, work dinner with the Clemson video crew. Shout out to Mr. Rick Bagby for providing us with some delicious calabash chicken at Fats.
He didn't even bring us some either. Look at that. What a friend.
I have leftovers in the car.
That's not doing us any good. We're in the studio.
Well,
right now.
I will bring you some calabash chicken and some Fats rolls with your name on it.
Did we even tell him he could come back on the show? I mean, I felt like we were kind of doing well.
I was hoping the door had locked.
Goodness.
Oh, you could have locked. I'm looking at the door of the studio now, Bradley. You could have locked it, and that would have
prevented.
That would have been a real sweet moment to see him just knocking on the glass.
There's a small little gap.
Just in here having a nice
I really
time.
did think about calling in or having somebody, because I know you'd recognize my phone number. I would have had one of my friends at the dinner call in, and I would have see if I'd have been able to disguise my voice and convince you that I was another person.
There's a small little gap right between that foam and the door handle right there. Jay, I would love to see Jay just poke his eyes through there and just look and give a little knock. Yeah.
Well, hey, just to catch him up and kind of get back on track. Our last segment, we somehow got into comparing basically Kelly Bryant and Jalen Hurts and kind of previewing how they're going to do next season and how what their draft stock may or may not be. Got a texter getting back in that is asking whether or not, because Oklahoma's offense is more pass oriented, is that going to force Jalen Hurts to throw the ball? And then a follow-up, if they both have a good season, who goes higher in the draft, Jalen Hurts or Kelly Bryant?
I would say, given equal playing fields, I think Kelly Bryant as a runner, I think we said this during the break, I think Kelly Bryant as a runner is better than Jalen Hurts. Jalen's a thick guy. Like, let's not be wrong here. Jalen's a very thick guy. He almost looks like a fullback out there. He looks like Mike Tolbert throwing the football.
I think Kelly is... Yes, he has flaws, but I think he's as close to a, dare I say, Cam Newton as we've seen in several years.
Well,
I'm not saying
like
he
Cam
is Cam Newton. Not saying he is Cam Newton.
I get the comparison.
But the playing style is somewhat similar. I think, in all honesty, Kelly kind of emulated Cam's playing style.
Well, I mean, that's his mentor. He went to his football camp a couple of times.
Yeah,
like, they're good friends.
It makes sense. And I think to Bradley's point and to your points that you both made in the previous segment that I was listening to on the way over, I would agree that he would probably be drafted higher than Jalen Hurts. Now, statistically speaking, I think I'm going to disagree with what y'all said. I think that Jalen has a better season statistically just with the talent pool he has around him.
Well, that's why we were trying to decide on an equal playing field. How would they both look like? If you put Kelly Bryant in an Oklahoma uniform, how would he compare to the way that Jalen Hurts would play? And I think Kelly Bryant would perform better than Jalen Hurts. I really do.
I think Kelly, too, because you think about the fact that Jalen's had an all-star crew around him while he's been in college. And Kelly, he had a lot of, stars at Clemson. We'll see what he does at Missouri. But I think Kelly's always been able to do a lot with a little, if that makes sense, whereas you really don't know yet if Hurts is going to be capable of something like that.
Well, and I think the comparison that came to mind for me, at least during the commercial, was that comparing them as far as runners go, I said that Jalen Hurts isn't a running quarterback. He's just not a throwing quarterback. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, neither of them have great arms, but I think Kelly's definitely got the better arm, and he's definitely more accurate. I mean, the man doesn't throw an interception, and
do
then
you really
scrambling,
want
he's
a
better.
running quarterback in the league.
That's the thing. I think both of them are going to have to showcase that they're able to throw the football at the end of this year.
Deep balls, accurate deep balls. That's the big thing.
And they're going to be forced to, because like we said in the break, like both of these schools they're going to be going to, their first option is usually passing the ball. They're not quite Mike Leach, but they're Oklahoma and Missouri both love to throw the football, and both these quarterbacks are going to be kind of forced to learn how to do that.
I think we all agreed, though, that neither of these guys we expect to make like successful NFL quarterbacks. Like starting NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Jalen's got a better chance of being a different position than Kelly does, because if you think about it, like what comes to mind when you think of Kelly Bryant not playing quarterback? What would he play?
Well, I think Kelly's pretty set on playing quarterback.
And
that's why he transferred.
Yeah, I think the whole reason that he transferred is because he wasn't, he didn't feel like he wanted to play a different position.
So did Jalen. I mean, same thing. True. He transferred as well. I mean, he wasn't going to play at Alabama. He had to go find somewhere else that would be serviceable for him.
Well, we did get, and this is completely shifting gears, but we did get a text right before the commercial break from Bradley's dad, of all people, and that's what it's signed, Bradley's dad. Do you think Dabo had an honest conversation with Hunter Renfrow when they discussed whether or not he would come back for his 9th season at Clemson?
Speaking of Hunter Renfrow, just real quick. So I was over.
Don't tell me he was at your Calabash chicken dinner.
No, but he was over in the facility today. I was actually over there saying goodbye to some people, DeAndre Overton specifically, and Hunter Renfrow was getting his hair cut. So after he got out of the barbershop.
What does he need a haircut for? His hairline's behind his ears.
I don't know. I mean,
the man looks 57. He doesn't need a haircut. He needs a hair implant.
He said that he's leaving said he was leaving for Oakland later this week. And
well, he's going to catch that flight.
It was quite a group. It was DeAndre Overton, Will Sweeney was on the golfing simulator.
Nice.
Hunter Renfrow was in there. John Simpson stopped by, and I'm trying to think of who else.
Are you just like bragging to our faces?
No,
right
I'm
now?
not bragging. But
we're getting this rubbed in.
Deshaun was there. Trevor was there.
We all laughed and ha-ha the whole afternoon.
Have you not been able to go over to the Reeves building at all?
No, I'm a normal person.
We don't all have.
We don't have access. I ain't special.
You were like last day in Dabo's world. I was like, I want my first day in Dabo's world.
So with Hunter, I think he came back. Are you asking why he came back?
No.
Well, no. Bradley's dad was just making a joke because we were talking earlier about like whether or not you think a coach is more. I mean, obviously supportive either way, but like, do you think a coach would rather his player come back for like their senior year, like a Christian Wilkins, or do you think they're more like if they're a junior that's in position to get drafted, are they more like, hey, like go do your thing, we don't need you here anymore, kind of deal?
But do you really think that Hunter felt like he was going to be drafted based off of all of his accolades up through his junior year? See, in my mind, maybe I'm mistaken, but I feel like Hunter needed this senior season to kind of cement the idea that, okay, this guy actually could play in the NFL.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I don't think we were arguing that.
So I don't think in Hunter's specific situation, against case-by-case basis, but in Hunter's specific situation, I think that unlike Cleveland Farrell or Christian Wilkins or Dexter Lawrence, he had to come back for a senior season. So I don't know if Dabo encouraged or discouraged those guys either way. I'm sure Dabo loved to have them all back, but I think for Hunter specifically, it was more of a necessity if you actually want to play in the NFL.
I think he actually probably would have been drafted last year. I'm going to play devil's advocate
By
here.
Who and
he
when?
really did not have statistically a phenomenal year this year. He only had 1 touchdown, 500 yards. He was really
wasn't he injured for a short period of time?
But hold on, look at his performance in championship games. Look at his performance in the postseasons against big time defenses like Alabama. I mean, the guy's had multiple touchdown catches. He's had almost 200 yards receiving.
I think Hunter already
he
already kind of established himself as a big game kind of guy his first 2 years when he was on the big stage. We kind of already knew what he was capable of during those games. This year, a lot of the talk about Hunter Renfrow was, why has he been here for 9 or 10 years?
But do you think who do you think would have drafted him this past year? Who do you think I
could have told you Oakland was going to draft him this year. I don't know who would have drafted him a year ago.
The Cowboys, the Patriots.
But when we were talking about the draft last week with Jackson and Hunter Renfrow specifically, the whole conversation was basically circling around, well, which teams out there in the NFL right now, A, could use somebody like Hunter Renfrow, and B, would actually take a chance on him. And the Patriots kept coming up. Really, we didn't hear Oakland. I mean, did you?
Well, of course not, because no one other than New England has made the short little white guy work.
What I'm saying to wrap up do you think that these teams like an Oakland would have taken a chance on Hunter Renfrow without this past season?
Yes.
Like if it had been a year ago,
yeah.
do you think there would have been an equal number of teams that would have taken a
I
chance?
think he would have been drafted in the 5th round last year too.
I would totally agree. Yeah. I think people already knew what Hunter Renfrow was capable of before this season, and he would have been taken because this is a different age of the NFL. If you can get a guy that can run routes that is really reliable, guys like Adam Thielen, who came out of in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota, like they're going to have a future
Wes
somewhere
Welker,
in the NFL.
I think is a good comparison.
Wes Welker.
Is a good
If
comparison.
anything,
Cole Beasley from the Cowboys.
Cole Beasley. Yep.
If anything, you can almost argue that this year would make you want to draft Hunter Renfrow less. And here's why.
That's what I'm saying. He did not have a good year.
No, well, and not even statistically speaking, but like look at the wide receiver talent around him of guys who are much younger and more inexperienced. They overshadowed him. What do you expect to happen when he gets to a team with NFL caliber wide receivers who are even more talented than him and even, stronger, faster, like that sort of thing? Like the thing with Hunter has been for the last 4 years, like he's had a huge chip on his shoulder because coming out of high school, nobody wanted him. And he's had to work his tail off to get to where he's been. And to his credit, he's deserved all of the success and all of the accolades that he has received. But in an NFL locker room outside of New England, the short little white guy works 1 out of 20 times, maybe. Just not saying because of anything about like who or what he is, but just his like physical stature is going to be, I think, probably what holds him back the most. Because guys in the NFL are big and they are fast.
It's going to be an uphill battle. Shorter career. I mean, his career may not be as long as some of these other guys, but I still think
if he makes the team at all, for that matter.
Yeah,
which I hate to say, because I would believe that he would, but there's nothing guaranteed.
There's a lot of competition. I mean, it's pro football at the highest level, and so obviously you hope the best for him. But I think still, the fact that he was even drafted
is awesome.
Is awesome. Yeah, I don't think that it's really.
Because I told Bradley this earlier, there were several mock drafts that, and this is kind of what we were talking about, just the disconnect, or not the disconnect, but like the lack of agreement in rounds like 3 through 7. Like you just don't really know who's going to go where. Like rounds 1 and 2, you kind of have figured out. Yeah. But like there were plenty of mock drafts who had Hunter Renfrow not being drafted at all, which I don't think you can blame anybody.
Really surprised a ton of people, and that's again not a knock on Hunter. It's just the nature of
the NFL,
his physical stature at that position that he's playing.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a bad thing that the Raiders took a chance.
No, not at all.
Given the type of college football wide receiver that he was, given how he can be used in today's NFL, and given the fact that they were already kind of looking at a lot of other Clemson and Alabama players to begin with. I mean, like we said before, there were 3 Clemson players that went to the Raiders alone. He's surrounded by Cleveland Farrell and Trayvon Mullen, so the familiar aspect of it for him is great. That's awesome for him.
And I think an interesting point that a texter is bringing up right now is having a quarterback with an accurate deep ball this year, I'm assuming talking about Trevor Lawrence, hurt him because with Deshaun Watson and Kelly Bryant, who didn't necessarily throw the greatest of deep balls, having that nice underneath guy, that Mr. Reliable, that Mr. Third Down was really nice because Hunter is not your down the field guy. He's just not. And especially with the guys that he's been surrounded with recently, Mike Williams, Deion Kane, T. Higgins, those kind of guys, he didn't have to be. So to be that slot guy who could always run the underneath route and always be open and available if you needed a cop out, he filled that role beautifully. And for a guy in Oakland, if Derek Carr is their starting quarterback moving forward, not really known for having the greatest of deep balls in the league, so could utilize him really well there too. So it could, it could end up being a perfect situation for Hunter. And if he can, and if he continues doing what he's done for the last 4 years, absolutely working his butt off and trying to be the best that he can be, I think he's got a successful future ahead of him. So I think it could end up being a really smart draft pick by the Raiders.
Hunter is already farther along than anyone would have predicted. And I think that's already a success story on its own.
It's a testament to Dabo's ability to refine talent.
He is our age and our size, and he was just drafted into the NFL and married Clemson's homecoming queen.
He stood next to me today, and honestly, I feel like I'm almost as broad.
You look kind of like him, too.
Yeah, except for the receding hairline.
Well, that's true.
We're getting
you do
there,
have more
Jay,
hair
don't
than
worry.
he
We're
does.
getting there.
But if
I don't have Jackson's hairline.
If I was a casual Clemson football fan, like if I was like, a high school girl that was looking at coming to Clemson, or a high school guy that's not into sports and was looking at coming to Clemson, and I didn't, wasn't really familiar with the players, but I knew who Hunter Renfrow was, and I saw Jay like in the shopping mall in Greenville, I'd be like, that might be Hunter Renfrow, like from a distance,
holding a bag of grapes, like that famous photo of him. Was that freshman year?
Freshman
year,
year.
It was him. That was over at Lightsey, I think. That was in one of the apartments.
And you know who's going to be saying that exact same thing? Like, who in the world is this guy? The Raiders security guard on day one when he walks in there. It's like Jeremy Lin. When
our kid, whose brother are you?
Can I see your ID? No, I'm a player.
Yeah, and I'm actually supposed to be here, but no, I think that given the right situation, the right circumstance, I think Oakland is probably a pretty good place for him to be. I know they're kind of retooling and rebuilding. But with Gruden and Mike Mayock as the GM, maybe moving forward, I wish him a ton of success, and I hope he finds it.
What do you think of Gruden drafting so many Clemson guys?
I think it's a sign that he is desperate to get some security. I think he wants to make the smart decision and not have a lot of people coming for his throat. Because if you take guys that you might not recognize or guys that might not really pan out, at least you can say you made a decent shot at going after the best players. And drafting from the two teams that made the championship game the year before, that's a pretty safe bet.
3 Clemson players.
And a couple Alabama players as well. So that is right there a telltale sign the Raiders want talent, they want security, they want stability. With a 10-year deal, you wouldn't really think you'd need that, but from Gruden after this past year, you definitely.
And you'd think that with drafting multiple guys from the same team already, that the chemistry would already be there, and so you won't have to work on that as much.
From Hunter's perspective, this is a great place to go. You want a place that you can go and make a name for yourself with a lot of opportunity, with a lot of, there's not a lot of huge guys, like outside of Antonio Brown, there's not a lot of wide receivers that he's going to be battling with that he probably couldn't beat out. I think Hunter Renfrow's got a really decent chance to do well on the Raiders.
I think if we look back on this draft, a couple years down the road or in history, and we look at the job that Gruden and Mayock have done with this draft class, I think you're looking at opposite ends of the spectrum. They're either going to knock this out of the park and come up with a brilliant strategy for drafting Clemson and Alabama guys, just taking some of the best players from the best teams, and it's going to work out beautifully, or the complete opposite end of the spectrum. We're going to look back and go, what the heck were y'all thinking? Like, you had the number 4 overall pick, and Cleveland Farrell's fine, but you could have taken so-and-so or so-and-so or
Josh Allen.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is going to be a very hit or miss. And for the Raiders' sake and for our guys' sake, I hope it's a huge hit, and I hope it works out really well.
We'll see. Like we said, the Raiders have the destination for the next year's NFL draft. Should be interesting. Maybe they'll be picking number 1 overall. If this all doesn't work out, they could be right back in the situation this time next year. We'll take a quick break. One more segment for AFR right around the corner.
When Doug and Denise Zerval opened Your Pie in Clemson, they soon realized what a great opportunity they had to give back to the community they love. They started sponsoring benefits and fundraisers to help local food banks and charities. In doing so, Your Pie franchise recognized Your Pie Clemson with the 2018 Community Engagement Award for the highest financial and personal involvement in their community. It's nice to know when you visit Your Pie, you're helping your neighbors. Your Pie Clemson, helping your community one pie at a time.
Don't forget, the Blue Heron Restaurant and Sushi Bar is a perfect location for wedding rehearsals, large groups, office parties, graduation parties, family reunions, and birthday celebrations. The Blue Heron can also take care of your catering needs. Locally owned and operated, the Blue Heron is proud to serve Tiger fans the finest steaks and freshest seafood around. 405 College Avenue in Clemson. Call 864-653-3354 for reservations. Visit BlueHeronFood.com for menu and more information.
Hi, folks. Spring is here. Mother's Day is right around the corner. And we know there's nothing that most of us wouldn't do to make sure all the special moms in our lives are happy. She deserves it. We know this. And that's why you should treat all those special moms to Sherry's Berries.
That's right, Quack. Sherry's Berries has special Mother's Day berries designed just for mom that are topped with chocolate chips, pink shimmer sugars, and swizzles. These gourmet goodies are sure to make your mom smile on Mother's Day. Choose your delivery date to ensure mom gets your gift of Sherry's Berries exactly when you want her to, and satisfaction is always guaranteed.
Now, I'm a procrastinator. I'm sure many of you are as well, but don't wait till the last minute on this one. Visit berries.com today to order freshly dipped strawberries, starting at $19.99 for all those moms in your life. To make mom really happy, you can double the berries for just $10 more. Mother's Day, Sunday, May 12th. That's not far away. Visit berries.com, BERRIES.com. Click the mic on the upper right-hand corner, enter our code OOB, and give mom that special gift this Mother's Day.
We're here at the Trane Heating and Air Conditioning Testing Facility to see how unstoppable their products really are.
All right, well, I don't like this one at all. Okay, inside this climate chamber, it's raining incredibly hard on this Trane AC unit. It's 5 to 6 inches of water an hour, actually. Apparently this room also does icy rain, but I'm definitely not sticking around for that. I'm completely soaked, but this machine doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. Clearly, it's hard to stop a train.
During the Trane Unstoppable event, now through May 31st, buy a qualifying Trane system from Pittman Heating and Air and choose special financing for 48 months, or up to a $1,000 trade-in allowance on a qualifying new Trane system. Visit PittmanAC.com or call 864-606-3769 for complete program eligibility, dates, details, and restrictions. That's PittmanAC.com. Subject to credit approval. License number M1646.
Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
When it's time to replace your roof, there are so many things to consider, from the type of roof you have to the many types and styles of shingles. Gilstrap Roofing understands how each part of our roofing system works together to give you a beautiful and watertight barrier. Don't trust the one thing that really protects your home to just anyone. Gilstrap Roofing has been covering the upstate for 4 generations. Proven, experienced roofers for your home or business. Gilstrap Roofing, 2691232.
Edwards Auto Sales in Walhalla has the area's best prices on new Ford trucks, cars, and SUVs. In business for over 50 years, shop Edwards Auto Sales for all your automotive needs.
Rely on EnviroMulch for your outdoor project. With all the rain we've had, they can help with rock crush and run along with 57 Stone for your erosion, flooding driveway, and water pooling issues. Order online at EnviroMulchOnline.com.
And now, back to After Further Review.
One final segment of After Further Review.
Wow.
Jay Smith and Bradley Kendall and Evan McDowell.
Is this an awkward time to tell you that I'm continuing the show on Flying Solo starting next week?
Not at all. I cannot wait to
go.
tune in. We're so calling in.
It's been an amazing 3-year stretch. September 19th, 2016 was the first AFR. Now,
where were you when this happened?
This brings back some memories. You know, you think about everything that has happened, not only in college football, but also in our lives these last 3 years. This was beginning of sophomore year for all of us. Now, Bradley and I ran the show for that first year, just the two of us. Evan jumped in a couple episodes there in the spring, and then started full-time with us year 2 in October, because we tried that 2-camera setup. I know y'all remember that at Tiger Vision.
That was a good time. Had the desk to myself, had the whole back room to myself, kind of like I do right now.
Right now, yeah, it's very similar. And
very similar.
A lot of parallels there.
Want to mention Freddie Pope, because without Freddie and his foresight and his commitment,
we would not be here now.
This show would not exist. Freddie was the general manager at Tiger Vision, the student TV network on campus at the time, when I approached him with the idea of doing a college football style show or podcast. And the reason that idea ever came into existence was because a good friend of ours, Robert Basha, made the joke.
Was it Robert? I thought it was Jack.
I think it was. From my recollection, it was Robert, but somebody made the point when Bradley and I were in the midst of one of our arguments about college football, that, hey, you guys should record this so I can go back and listen to it because it's really entertaining. And the idea was born, went to Freddie, and he was very open and receptive. They had, a sports show already in programming, but he was like, hey, y'all can run a pilot. We'll see how it goes. Did the pilot, started live the week after, and did 20 episodes. The first year we had
that was a long time ago.
Had 10 in the fall, 10 in the spring, and then we started back the fall of junior year. Evan jumped in October. We did, we had 28 episodes, I think.
You're the one that keeps track of the numbers, so you should know.
We were like episode 21 through 48 was junior year, and then we started here at WCCP thanks to Ben Milstead and Deborah Jones and everybody here at the station. This past summer on a weekly basis, we did Saturday
John
morning
Haidt,
shows.
dude, giving his Saturday mornings to us, that was incredible.
Yeah, and so we've been doing a show here once a week ever since. In the fall, we had a 1-hour segment right after Tiger Calls. And no, it was before. It was before Tiger Calls. Ran from 7 to 8. And then here in the spring, we've had a 2-hour gig, flipping back and forth with Tiger Calls when Coach Brownell had his during basketball season. And it has been quite a ride. Also want to mention Taylor Wilson. The second year at Tiger Vision was all Taylor, and he helped, kind of continue the momentum that we had built after our first year. He helped us with a lot of the technical sides of the show. I mean, it was obviously audio and video with it being on the student TV station.
And then people got tired of looking at our faces and told us we should go to radio instead.
Yeah, told us that we had faces for radio.
Y'all's faces.
But definitely want to shout out Freddie Pope and Taylor Wilson and Scout Bedingfield for all the behind-the-scenes work that they did to make the quality of the show as high as it was, because that was definitely one of the selling points when we went to WCCP about possibly doing a show here on the airs was that we have been able to maintain a consistent level of high quality, and that is thanks to those three people, because without them, it would not have been possible.
Humble brag there, right?
Oh,
No, it was high quality until we started recording, and then you invited me on full time, and the quality dipped way down.
You ever seen an exponential graph go straight up? It's just straight down, man.
Just a hard nosedive, a straight DB Cooper.
Kind of like
to
the hill
ground.
we're about to throw a golf ball on soon, hopefully, right?
Somebody keeps saying
We got a
happen.
week and a half. I was promised that it would definitely happen before we graduate, but there's a lot that I got to do before I graduate. That's definitely one of them.
So,
also graduation. Can we just graduation biggest ripoff of all time?
Oh, of course.
Graduation?
Yes, like actually having to leave, like being kicked out of like.
I thought you
Clemson
were-
saying like, "Hey,
Oh,
like
I mean,
like
I thought
actually
you could
like
come back for your
graduating."
masters.
I could
if you wanted to.
We'll keep that in
Give
the cards.
I mean, the university will take your money. They're cool
I'm
with
sure
it.
they will.
They're
I just
cool
love
with
the
it.
fact that they throw in all these little small payments here and there for your
Yeah,
one-time price of
course.
like $200 just for 1 minute of one day on one random day of the year.
And it probably doesn't make sense coming from me, someone that hasn't had to pay his own bill, but man, does it feel like it's been worth it. I mean, like it hasn't been my money, but I sure hope I've gotten my dad's money's worth at least. 'Cause these 4 years, and not just, I mean, doing the show obviously has been a big part of that for the last at least 2.5, 3 years of my life. But you know, just the memories and friends and relationships that I've made over the last 4 years, it really sucks to see it have to come to an
And real
end.
quick, I do want to ask y'all, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but I do want to ask y'all, give me your favorite memory from the show and I guess one of your least favorite memories from the show.
Ooh.
Wow.
Are we trying to like hurt feelings here?
We got 9 minutes to roast each other and then we're done forever.
I'd say the most entertaining moment of the show was definitely what we have in our open that is still used. The whole Trevor
Even though it's not
Lawrence.
You want it?
It's not relevant at all.
Do you want it?
Yeah, you can play it real quick.
You're talking about the head tattoo
After
part.
further review, a Clemson student's perspective on sports.
It's AFR time, baby. Let's get up. Let's get rolling.
Right.
Personal foul, 69, offense. He was giving them the business. He played it down.
Okay, so if Trevor Lawrence isn't either the second or third string quarterback in the fall, I shave my head and you get a hint of tattoo.
You gotta get a head tattoo. You gotta shave your.
So that moment right there lives in infamy because it is the opener for every show that we've had since then.
John just gave me a really funny look. He came in front of the window and like made sure to make eye contact with me, and I went, "No, like this intro is like actually supposed to be
this
playing."
is part of the show. That was probably the most entertaining part, and WCCP did a great job, obviously, putting that together. But there's been so many moments where people have either said some stuff that they would, obviously like to take back, like predictions.
I do that
predictions.
on a daily basis.
Then we had the third episode ever where we made a bet and Bradley lost the bet and he had to say that UNC was a top tier
Yeah, because
program.
the UNC kicker decided to get the leg of a century and kick a 56-yarder to beat Florida State.
Speaking of which, the first episode we ever did, and you mentioned this during the break, the first game we ever talked about was California beating Texas by a score of 50-43.
Was it 50-43? I thought it was 45-44.
It was 50-40. Alabama squeaked by Ole Miss that same week.
Wow.
This was the year that Alabama scored 48. Ole Miss was 43.
That would have been Chad Kelly. That would have been the shootout.
That was Swag Kelly, the shootout.
Those baby blue helmets.
Ole Miss.
Wow.
That's
Back
how
in
long
the
it's
day.
been.
That's crazy.
Have you ever gone back and just looked
Louisville
at
beat Florida State 63-20.
Wow. That
College
mile
football
the
has
mighty have
changed.
It's
fallen.
crazy how like 4 years doesn't sound like a really long period of time, and in the grand scheme of things, it's really not. But there's been, and not just college football, but there's been so much that's changed since fall of 2015.
Yep.
Like I couldn't even begin to like list out everything, at least that affects me personally or in my life, that's different now than it was almost 4 full years ago.
Do you want me to list out who was in the top 10 back in 2015?
Absolutely. Is that even a question,
That
dude?
would be awesome.
Let me go back. All right, 2015, and I've done this like in my free time before. I'll go back and look through like the 2008 top 10 and just see like these random teams that have popped up. So the final, we'll go. So this would have been what, week 3 of 2015?
I think so, yeah.
Or 16?
Because it was September 19th, so that's probably either week 3 or week 4.
It would have been 2016 though, right?
Yes, 2016. Yeah,
Okay.
2016.
So
rankings.
your oh my gosh, your your top 10 back, and it's not overly ridiculous, but your top 10 back in week. Oh, that's the final rankings. Let me go to week.
I'm looking at Clemson. They're 14-1. That's definitely not it.
Let me go to week 3.
That's a heck of a first 3 weeks of the season to win 14 games. Well done
in week 3.
Go
That's
Tigers!
impressive.
Oh wow, this is
Here we go.
Good. Here we go. So number 1 overall, obviously Alabama receiving 56 votes. This was week 3 of 2016. They were 2-0 at the time. Number 2, you want to talk about how the mighty have fallen? The Florida State Seminoles.
Yikes!
At 2-0 at the time.
Big oof down in Tallahassee.
Big oof. Florida State, or not Florida State. Ohio State was at 3. Michigan
6 is a surprise.
Right there at 4. Clemson was in at number 5. Obviously, they rose a little bit higher as the year went along. After that, we actually fell 3 spots that week. I guess that was after the Troy game.
That was a tough one.
That was a tough one. Number 6. You want to take a guess, Evan? Not a Power 5 school.
You'll never get it.
Houston?
Yeah.
Yes, the Houston Cougars.
You're not looking at it,
a round
are
of
you?
applause for that one. Thank you. I'm here for another 10 minutes.
Greg Warb's under center, and this was back when the Group of 5 still thought they could get in the college football
That would have
playoff.
been Ed Oliver's, freshman, sophomore year?
Somewhere around that, yeah.
Doesn't
Number
matter.
7. I guess they only played 1 game before that. The Stanford Cardinal at number 7. This was, I guess, pre-Bryce Love Heisman talk.
The Pac-12's only hope for the
this would've
playoff.
been-
That was literally our talking point from
This
the
was
first show.
Christian McCaffrey, I guess, back in the day, right?
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah,
We went to the Washington Huskies. They were on their rise to power, I believe, before their first trip to the playoff that year. So that was kind of their
Jake
coming out
Browning
party.
era.
Jake Browning.
Yes.
Wisconsin at 9. Wouldn't have been a huge surprise if they hadn't fallen off last year. We'll see how they turn things around. And then Louisville at 10.
Well, we all know how that ended up with them shellacking Florida State.
Was that the year that we? No, that was our freshman year. We played Notre Dame here.
Louisville was sophomore year.
and that
Louisville was
was the
sophomore
second
year.
best game I've
And
ever
this
seen
was
in Death Valley.
truly the beginning of the end for one school in the top 25, the number 21 ranked Baylor Bears. This was one of their last appearances in that top 25 for a long time.
That's crazy.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if I'm able to pick my favorite moment all time on the show.
Oh, I think
the Bowl Mania shows were really entertaining.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that the goal, I mean, I don't know how good we were actually adhering to it, but the goal was to go through every bowl game in an hour, which essentially was like a minute and a half for each bowl game. And you had usually we'd have 3 to 4 people on those shows. Okay, I will say my favorite episode that I've ever done was probably the interview with Mark Packer.
That was great.
I mean,
Paul Feinbaum
was amazing. That was an amazing interview, and I still can't believe we were able to have that opportunity to talk to Paul Feinbaum.
You're welcome, Jay.
But Mark Packer was a riot, and he is somebody that I love listening to, and I think he's, huge Clemson guy, really personable, has a great presence on air, and really enjoy talking to Packer.
I will say, and this isn't from an on-air perspective, but my favorite part of this whole show was last summer. And I don't know if anybody listening or anybody who cared outside of our family would have realized this, but none of the 3 of us stayed here in Clemson over the summer.
No.
We were all at home. Bradley, you in Charlotte, Jay in Lexington, me in Albemarle. So we were at least each 2 hours from Clemson. So every Friday afternoon, I would drive through Charlotte, embrace that 5 o'clock traffic. I'd pick up Bradley, and we'd drive the 2 to 4 hours to get to Clemson. And we'd spend, for the most part, I think we spent all weekend in Clemson, played a little golf, maybe went to the pool, obviously did the show Saturday morning, grabbed a couple of good meals together. So just making those summer memories, those road trips, all of those weekends were probably a lot more fun than I would have had otherwise. So getting to spend every weekend in Clemson with the 2 of you knuckleheads and some of your friends out on the golf course was definitely a good time.
Yeah, it's hard to believe if you count the number of hours we've spent not only
probably more than I've done schoolwork
on the show, but also preparing for the show.
Probably shouldn't say that.
I mean,
Sorry, Mom.
It's just incredible. Riley, you got the floor. We got a minute left.
My 2 least favorite moments were probably the 2 opening lines we've had from both the radio and the TV aspect. They were the 2 of the most awkward moments I've ever had in my entire life, not knowing exactly what you were going to say.
Yes.
Because you would tell me, hey, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to say your name, and then you're going to bring in a line. But you would go on and say my name and then continue talking, and I would try to interrupt you, and then you would stop and be like...
And it looked great on camera.
It looked awful on
great.
camera. I looked like I was seeing ghosts, man. I didn't know what was going on.
Well, it's crazy, but the time here has come to a close. Again, we really appreciate everyone at WCCP and all that they've done for us. Everyone at Tiger Vision.
Sorry, I had to get one more out.
Yeah, been a lot of fun bringing you this edition of After Further Review. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Jay Smith, Bradley Kendall, Evan McDowell, we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.